Topic 1. In the UK, there is an administrative branch called the Government Equalities Office. It is responsible for promoting social equality. That's pretty obvious, I guess. Under the ruling Conservative Party, there has been criticism due to broken promises and lack of action on issues important to the LGBT community, including a ban on conversion therapy. Should we ever expect that conservatives who take control of a government can ever be relied upon to promote equality? Or is this diametrically opposed to their ideology, making them incapable of being effective arbiters of change? And so, yeah, this was the UK story that inspired this topic. But we don't just have to talk about the UK. We can talk about other governments, right? Like when Republicans get in office, or whatever they're called in Canada, right? In office. Can
Maples.
they...
Maples.
That makes sense. When when they get in office, can they actually be arbiters of change? Like, could you see that happening, or will they only ever have promises during their campaigns and break them? So we'll start the 1 minute introductions. Johnny, Scarlett.
Okay. I don't think that every conservative must be diametrically opposed to equity, although equality being that everyone gets the same thing, I think that a lot of people are actually diametrically opposed to that and don't even realize it. But equity being that everyone gets what they need, I know a lot of conservative people in the US at least who are totally okay with that. I do agree that conservatism in general, they're conserving a tradition, they're conserving a certain, aesthetic or way of life. And so many of them may be opposed to giving everyone what they need if it includes queer folks. I will say also that there is the matter basically there is the matter of me forgetting what I was about to say and passing it along to the next person because yeah.
It's brilliant, I guarantee
Thank
you.
you.
And Johnny's gonna drop it on us later on, and your
For sure I'll
jaws
remember.
on the floor. That's exactly where they'll be. All right, Marcy.
All right. Well, I can't really speak to the European conservative tradition. I don't live in England. My history seems pretty clear on the British Conservative Party being pretty terrible, but I don't know. Maybe they have more honor-bound, principled conservatives than we do. I can only speak to America. In the context of the country I live in, no. I would not trust conservatives with the reins of any sort of equality office. Conservatives in America, namely the conservative leaders and largely the conservative base, are a fucking death cult who promote fucking policies that will lead to the deaths of us all, solely because, people in power like oil, and people who don't have power are really easy to make angry at brown people and gay people. All right. So, I mean, I don't think every conservative is a bad person. I think most conservatives are like the victims of a larger than life fucking misinformation campaign from the top down from a bunch of people who want their money. And I think that those people should not be trusted with anything regarding to equality or equity or social justice or anything like that, because all of those things are completely antithetical to what the American Republican Party is all about.
Thanks so much. Colorado.
Yeah, I think like individual conservatives are fine, but like as a party as a whole, they like to have this aesthetic of the belief that there truly is an equality of opportunity, and thus they would never go ahead and do anything to like prove essentially that there isn't a equality of opportunity within both the fake Europe, also known as UK, Canada, and the States. There's just this general thing of like never wanting to go ahead and make anybody's circumstances better because American dream or white picket fest or bootstraps. So yeah, no, I don't really trust that it would be possible for them to go ahead and do any form of change unless there's like some type of like overwhelming cultural shift. So like in Canada, the only reason why like conservatives had to go ahead and be like, yeah, fine, queer rights, whatever, fuck it, is because they recognize that like overwhelmingly like Canada was a country that was overall progressing towards that. So we got like gay marriage passed a lot earlier than other countries or states. But otherwise, unless they're able to see that there's like some type of like proven positive outcome for them, conservatives are not going to help anybody else.
Thanks so much. Josie?
Well, you know me, always diving in that nuance. So basically, I look at this question and I'm like, yeah, of course, there's like certain sets of ideals that different political parties lay on their platforms and their pillars. So for me, it's like it's not a question of can we make the other party look at equality, but enshrining the equalities that we do get in a way that makes no matter what ruling party is in place to be able to win these things. So for example, like if you have an amendment, hey Maddie. So when you have an amendment, it makes it much harder to remove those enshrined equalities. And one of the things that I think about when I think of these questions is like, how do we make the Liberal Party more, more, I guess, stronger to ensure that they do put these enshrines in place? Because one thing that I've noticed is not necessarily that the conservatives are hateful people and can be, and I know because there's a lot of people who've been very hateful toward me. But basically, it's not as much as they're hateful. It's just that that their power is too easily effective. So why are these like, bulls in China shops so easy able to like take out a pillar of equality with just a quick sledgehammer or like one elected human? And it's like all of a sudden all the equality topples with one swing of their sledgehammer. So we need to make sure that we also strengthen the liberal parties to make them take actions like amendments, to let them take actions that enshrine things that take decades to unravel. That's the type of laws that these liberals need to be passing. The conservatives, they suck. And as soon as you give them something too hard to pass, they'll move away and think of something else to fight on. I've just seen it. Like, that's just how they work. So that's kind of how I'm going to approach this question.
Thanks so much. Sunny?
I agree with part of what Josie was saying about how can we, put something in place that is beneficial to LGBTQ plus individuals and, solidifies these human rights that doesn't won't be affected by which party is in power. And, like being able to just like take out like a basic human right by just like signing it off like really shouldn't be that easy. As for this question for expecting conservatives if they can be trusted with this, you know I don't think anyone here, well, maybe, is gonna write off the entirety of anyone who has voted for the conservatives or considers themselves conservatives. I know we see at different degrees of like acceptance of other people's lifestyles and ideologies and identities. But like the fact is that this is where our society is moving. This is where we're progressing. It's like you like hop on like the bandwagon or like get left behind. Like that's like just how it is. I'm not really like it's not an argument that I'm like want to have anymore of like do they get the rights, do they not get the rights. And up here in Canada there's a lot more to do, but I think maybe I might be able to find some examples to share with some of the Americans here. Maybe Kat has some. I appreciate having another Canadian here. Like what was brought up to me recently was Bill C-16, which I'm sure some people have probably heard. I'm sure some freaking alt-right Canadians have gone crazy about it. But there's an example of like solidifying human rights for trans people within our criminal code, within our Human Rights Act, and yada yada. But I'll get into that later. But I also just wanted to say, Josie, I love you so much. You remind me of Miss Frizzle from the Magic School Bus. Doesn't anyone else think that?
I'll hey, Miss Frizzle was well informed, fun to talk to. I think that's a good fit. Yeah. What a reference! Oh wow, good
I
work
could
on
see
that.
that. I
Not
could
enough
see it.
equations on her dress. I do not stand
Yeah,
this.
I get it. I can see it.
Yes.
Wow.
Get that bitch a lizard.
I
Get her a
will take
lizard.
it. I will take it. I'm wearing a sunflower dress. It makes sense. We're going to talk about photons. We're going to talk about the sunlight
Oh my
and
god.
photosynthesis.
Oh my god.
We're going to go down in the garden
All
and
of
learn
it.
everything. We're going to figure it out on a cellular level. Let's
Yeah.
go.
We're going to enter the bodies of one of our students, right? Because
Don't bring
was
it up. No, don't bring that.
they ate nothing but carrots and like their skin turned orange at one time. All right. Oh,
That's right.
I remember that
Side
episode.
story.
I'm okay. That's how old I am. I remember that episode.
There you go.
All right. Neil, please.
Okay.
Ah.
So first of all, when it comes to the Conservative Party in the United Kingdom, since I'm not British, I'm part of a real country. I don't really know that much about them. I know that they promised to ban conversion therapy, which they immediately did not do. They promised to do a Gender Reform Act, which immediately never materialized in any form of substance. And they've withheld lots and lots and lots and lots of funding to the NHS when it comes to transgender healthcare. Now, when we get down to the notion that will conservatives be the ones that uphold change or do any specific changes for LGBTQ, especially, or trans people in particular? It's a very nuanced issue. I'm gonna have to agree with Josie on that, because the thing is that we could say in general the Republican Party as it stands in the United States does not like trans people as they exist. But there are certain trans individuals that run within the Republican Party and that are generally well established. One would be Caitlyn Jenner, for example. We also have to remember that during the extremely tilted era of Donald Trump, the very, very conservative leaning Supreme Court was the court that upheld the fact that we fundamentally do have employee rights and that we are protected under very specific discrimination bills. So the thing is that conservative parties aren't really going to change a lot unless if it comes to fighting wars for oil. What they are going to do is mostly conserve the laws that we already have. So if we want them to defend our laws, we need to make the laws that fundamentally allow us to exist properly and not just be, a tax deductible asset.
Thanks so much. Next, we have Maddie, who's another stream queen, another former stream queen. Maddie is back with us. We're so excited. We know we are. Maddie, thank you for being here. Maddie, you can introduce yourself and then the topic.
Great. Yeah, hi, I'm Maddie. Sorry I'm running late. My computer and my Bluetooth headphones have all decided to conspire against me this week. So it's been a really fun time and fun start to the summer. But yeah, hi, I'm Maddie Cakes. I stream about a lot of things. I do a lot of panel shows like this, and I've been doing deep dives into like top fun topic areas that are political or economics. I do a lot. It's great. Hello. So about this topic, it's difficult because I don't think as individuals, conservatives don't believe that LGBTQ plus people have the right to exist. I think there are so many examples of conservatives at an individual level who are supportive of those. The problem is that collectively and with the groups that they belong to, they just consistently, time and time again, demonstrate that either it's not a priority for them to advance the rights of people who are LGBTQ, or they just pretend that there isn't a problem and refuse to even address that it needs to be solved. And another really frustrating pattern that I see, and I think a lot of people have seen with conservatives, not only in our country, but also in the UK, is that they don't seem to care about the problem or acknowledge that there's a problem until it directly impacts them or someone immediately in their orbit. So it's not unreasonable to doubt their ability to, in good faith, confront these issues, especially when it's part of an official branch of the government. It's kind of like expecting the Republicans here to properly run the EPA, which is something that they like blatantly don't think should exist or is necessary. So it's difficult because, again, on an individual level, I don't necessarily think that, like, I think there are plenty of conservatives who care about these issues, but for those in power and that's kind of toe the party line, it's clear that they don't, and that they would rather just they sweep it under the rug. Um, so yeah, I don't trust them, and I hope that we see growth in that area, especially as LGBTQ plus rights are more prominent and widely supported by the public, but I have very low expectations.
Thanks so much. Open to the panel.
I wanted to bring up Nikki Tutorials of YouTube. She's a really fabulous makeup artist and she has millions of followers. I'm sure a few of you have heard of her. She was forced last year to come out as a trans woman because someone who knew her from childhood blackmailed her. And she went on to be able to be one of the hosts of Eurovision, which is one of the largest European-wide game shows that they have. And she did that very recently. When she came back, which was about actually 5 hours ago, I watched her video. I always watch them as soon as they come out. She was talking about how worried she was that her home country of the Netherlands was going to not support her because while they are a relatively progressive country, there are a lot of people who, since she has come out, have absolutely just demonized her. And she was lucky enough that most of Europe and most of her country were very supportive of her in her endeavors this year. But all of that to say this, I think that a lot of the hallmarks of conservatism are such that they're not progressive. They are generally not trying to progress into something. They are trying to conserve a value or conserve a general way of life. And so yes, as a couple of our panelists mentioned, oftentimes, unless something is very personal to them, they do not change their minds, unfortunately. And I think it will take people like Nikki and people like us being openly queer in front of our families, in front of our conservative friends, to sway them to see that the things that we need medically, uh, as far as conserving our jobs and not being able to be fired for our gender identities, those sorts of things will require not just lawmaking, but also a very personal touch that I don't know if the queer community is really emotionally ready to give yet.
Josie? Muted?
You're muted.
I'm doing that PrimeCayes mute where it's like, yeah, is that because that's a thing, right? Apparently, okay, all right. Anyways, got to pander if I'm gonna be stream queen. Anyways, I think about this thing a question a lot on stream. We think about like if we could bottle the emotional experience of a child coming out as trans to a conservative parent that makes them change their outlook on life, where they literally change, they have to make the decision of either love my child or dump them forever. Not saying every time, because sometimes they say I've dumped them forever. I'm not saying that it's always the great thing always, but a lot of times the parent has this turnaround. There's this refinding moment. The patterns in their head become broken because all the outlets are trying to tell them, hey, your kid is a sinner, like you're supposed to hate them, you're not supposed to love them, and all of a sudden it's like, let me block out that information for a little bit, and it breaks the pattern, and then they're like free from the shackles of that propaganda for such a moment that sometimes they can get out of the hole, right? Sometimes. Now, I love the idea of like, you know, if only the conservatives could all have that come to Jesus moment where they can think about losing their family member because they're coming out as queer. But unfortunately, there's only so many of us. And although visibility is the theory of change, the fact is, even now, roughly only 70% of Americans actually know a trans person. I think it's gone down 10% from like last year, which was 80%. So the fact of the matter is, like, we don't have time to do a giant visibility campaign to win over the hearts and minds of conservative people in the Deep South. Are we trying to do that? Yes. Are we being successful? Yes. Are we dying for it? Unfortunately, yes. Right? And the problem with that is because we don't have those laws in place and enshrined to give the basic protections to be open for those conservatives to see the person that is super awesome and cool and amazing, right? And it's those laws that create those barriers of conservatism, of keeping the way things are. And there are gatekeepers trying to prevent the queerness from going into those spaces because they want to keep the queer out, because out of sight, out of mind, right? And they will be willing to kill somebody to ensure that that's the case, right? So when I think of it, again, I'm going to go back to, we need to enshrine these laws so people can be held accountable to be forced to confront the reality that people inequality and the way you love and the way that you are and the way that your being is completely 100% legal, because right now it's not in every space. And if, as long as there's a conservative party that is going to continue to say that that's okay, that's the status quo that they want to conserve, I'm not for it, right? So I'm going to do everything I can to build up an opposition so strong to smash it in its entirety if I have to. So for me, it's like creating the laws to make sure that the tools are in place to destroy the conservative ideology in every sense of the word, because it's only brought in pain and suffering to the people that I know and love the most. So
How
yeah.
helpful is actually like knowing somebody that is trans for people that are conservative? Just because I've seen those situations in which, they're voting on some type of law that would go ahead and hurt trans kids. A 10-year-old trans kid comes and talks about their experience, and you're like, yeah, that's fucking nice, kid, but like, I'm still gonna go ahead and pass this like law that ruins your life. They're able to go in and like very eloquently say, like, this is who I am, and like, "Why are you trying to hurt me?" And they're like, "'Cause fuck you, have a nice day."
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
That's
get-
kind of what I was talking about when I was saying that I think the American Republican Party is just a death cult at this point that just kind of like does whatever the hot thing is. It's like a moral panic machine that just responds like knee jerk to any moral panic that happens. And it's the same with trans people as it was with gay people 10 years ago, and it'll might be trans people in 10 more years, might be another group, but I don't think we're going to like cure the conservatives. So I largely agree with what you're saying, Josie. Like, institutions should be built around preserving these freedoms and rights for people, because the conservatives can't be trusted, clearly.
Well,
Yeah, we need like a fail safe. And one
Yeah,
thing really quickly that someone shared in my chat, which is like crazy to me, and I don't know if I'm repeating something, I apologize, but yeah, like that 70% of people don't know a trans person. And the last Gallup poll showed that only 20% know a trans person, like personally. So I have to assume that that has a massive impact on the way just people as a whole like think about this. Because if they don't have that interaction, or just being able to like place someone in their own life in that situation, or see the implications of these laws and other things that are passed like reflected back to them through someone they know, I would imagine that it makes it really difficult for a lot of people to empathize, because like they just, everyone they see, everyone they engage with is like, looks like them, feels like them.
All right, so I was gonna say real quick, Marcy, that like fundamentally, like, yeah, you're right. They are going to react whenever there's any kind of pushback. I mean, after all, the Republican Party is very, very reactionary, so they like intentionally, by the definition, they're only going to react when pushed. So it's like, in the 60s and 50s, it was, black people in the 80s, 90s to early 2000s. It was the dreaded gay agenda. Now we have people on, reactionary sides of the left and reactionary sides of the right talking about transgender ideology as if, we have some specific textbook that we're going to drag out and teach to kids or something. So, fundamentally it is reactionary, and it seems like now we're starting to get to the point where most people are accepting of specific trans people enough to the point that they'll tolerate the existence of them. But it seems like now the next thing is going to be Asian people. They're going to be super, super against people like me and Kat. And we could see that going on in the streets because they've already been primed by the Trump administration to say, all right, well, trans people aren't really the main problem now because the Supreme Court said so. Now we need to worry about Asians because they might give you the terrible viruses that they're making. The Republican Party fundamentally always needs an enemy because without an enemy, a reactionary party cannot survive and will eat itself.
I would like to agree with you, but I also kind of need to add the qualifier that, like, the Republicans, like you say, like, yeah, they do definitely tend to pick a main struggle, but the Republicans haven't stopped being afraid of black people since black people were around. I mean, conservatives, not Republicans, because the party switch, whatever. But like, and like trans people and gay people are the same way. As soon as they pulled back the trans layer, they're gonna go for the gay layer if they got their way. So it's. I don't think that. I think that's an important level of intersectionality, is that conservative parties will always attack like the most what is the term, like the fad group or whatever, like the group that is like the biggest fad to be against, but even as new fads emerge, they will still hold those biases against the old group, as we've seen with the way Republicans still treat the idea of black people being killed by police in this country. So
but we still have Democrats that have those very strong biases as well too. So I mean, the idea is that, like, fundamentally the Republican Party is doing what it does best, and that's reaction and scaremongering. Now, when it comes to different state legislatures and things like that, that's where we need to get super, super scared, because you have Democrats like in my state, the great state of Pennsylvania. Actually, we're not a state; we're a Commonwealth. I don't know why I even said that. Who generally will veto any of the trans scare bills. And then you have things like Arkansas, where they essentially want to reinstitute segregation against trans people by, saying, oh, you've got to use the labeled trans people bathroom. You can't use the regular people's bathroom.
It already passed in Tennessee. That law already passed in Tennessee.
Yeah. So
here in Idaho, we had similar kind of slippery slopes. The ACLU actually intervened here, though.
Yeah, it comes down to how many people on the left and the right are going to actively fight back against what is clearly discrimination. Because if it was any other particular group, say for example that if they put up a sign that says no Asians or no Irish, we would see legitimately thousands of different groups out there in the streets protesting these types of bills. So we need to ask ourselves, like, yeah, the Republican Party is bad, but why are none of us out in the streets immediately protesting this? Why is it just the ACLU in one specific state? Like, I know that they're spread super thin, but the problem is that we need to make our voices heard. And given these statistics from the last election, it seems like more and more of us aren't allowing our voices to be heard. So more and more old white dudes who are scared of literally anything, including their fucking shadow because their shadow's black, are getting into office.
Is there a chance that perhaps, like, with these other issues, such as like gay marriage, it affected so many other more people, and also a lot of people that happen to have some type of systemic power, whereas trans people are some of the like most disenfranchised people? So thus, like, what power do they really have to essentially fight back? And also, like, the amount of people that are trans, it's a lot smaller than the amount of people that in general that fall under the LGBTQ umbrella. And a lot of people that are like in the LGBTQ umbrella a lot of times want to distance themselves from trans people, that are like, that's not really my fucking problem. Lel, okay, have fun with that.
So
that's a big problem.
You touched really on hard. Something that I and you and Maddie touched on, like, really important pieces. Talking about empathy, right? I think it's very important. It gets to the heart of the matter, right? This isn't, the statement I'm going to make is not about literally every conservative, right? You can be a conservative and not fall into this, right? But it sure is the case for a lot of them. and that they have trouble empathizing with people outside their immediate circle, right? We've seen this over and over again. We've seen this from Republicans, right, and quite famous Republicans. We saw this with Dick Cheney, right? Very famously, Dick Cheney, which was vice president in uber Republican, no one's liberal, was for gay marriage. Why were they for gay marriage? Because their daughter happened to come out and be gay, right? And then that changed their mind. Oh, okay. Oh, I see. You're a human being. Ah, yeah. I thought you were like a monster. Like I had like all kinds of ideas. But now that you're within my family, within the sphere that I actually care about, now I get it. So now I won't terrorize gays the way I was doing previously, right?
Who knew they were people, right?
Who
knew?
And so
I had
and
no idea I was people.
Exactly,
all of a sudden
right?
it's like, what?
And-
But my daughter's a person. Oh my god.
And we saw and it's interesting on the women's side actually, but that's like another thing. But specifically though, like we've seen other Republicans, other policymakers go through the exact same transition, right? And so you have the issue of trans individuals, and like Katarana just very helpfully said, there aren't many of them, right? There aren't many of them. It's far less likely that you'll have one of those in your family, right? A trans individual. So it's far less likely these people will change their minds. If that's the path that they need, right? If they need someone in their family, then it's different. So if Josie, is organizing, helping people, helping reach these people, maybe introduce them to a trans individual, and like, don't think like there's that idea, of course, this very famous stereotypical idea, right, of some very large, very hairy man on a wig and a dress coming into the bathroom touching your daughter. Like that's the thing that's been thrown around in conservative media all the time, right? And so you have to break these stereotypes, let them know they're people. And yeah, go ahead, Josie.
Yeah, you're making me get an idea of adopt a trans program. Don't know a trans person? Adopt one today. Send them
you
over
can
with
make
a lot of
so-
extra love.
Oh, imagine how much money
Yeah.
you can make from that.
I know.
Just by like milking the sympathies of people.
I know.
Uh,
Yeah,
Make
but
it work
anyways.
for you. Yeah.
In the
Yeah.
arms of an angel. And, like, it's got like trans people
Okay.
like looking sadly up in black and white.
It's just a close up of Josie with like a single tear like rolling down her cheek. And then Neo just like sitting on the corner, like gazing out the window wistfully.
Me and my meme trans shark, because as all Twitter told me to be a trans
You have the
person. I need
blahage?
It's just Contra and like a bathtub of I'm
my
ready.
lap.
Okay. So all jokes aside, I did have a point. So okay. So I do want to say this. I want to say this. So there are many stories of like Republican lawmakers having a family member come out, and then that family member is like, "Oh, I've been touched. I'll fight for the Equality Act." And you know what the Republican Party does? It's like, "Okay, so we lost one." Right? They don't care. Like they really don't care, and they're not going to fight it because they know it's optically not cool. And it's like, oh, that Republicans got the gay family shield. They're fine, right? Like now they don't have to have a gay friend anymore. They can say they have a gay daughter and we're good. Like so it's like they actually trope it out like that, right? So to go take it even further, like, and this is the thing, right? And although I believe, Neo, I think that if and Neo, what's your pronouns? I
She, her.
I didn't hear you. She,
Oh,
her.
she,
Thank you
her.
so much.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So what Neo said, and I want to say this. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm losing my point. My point was like right here, and it's like further getting away from me. It's
family?
the Equality Act. Equality Act.
Gotcha.
That's what it was. Okay, because that's always my anchor in my life is the Equality Act. I'm always like guiding light Equality Act. It's probably what I was going to. So the thing is, right now Republicans and the reactionaries and how people are like fighting, and then what Neo said is like, oh, if we go out and we riot and we get angry and we get upset. For them, that's not about, it's not that we hate trans people. It's the fact that we just want to help these institutions. We want to help women. We want to help children. We want to do all these things. And what they do, and it's very sinister, right? They'll get a couple states, like, and I'm actually a national strategist and an organizer for this, so I can actually, like, this is exactly what they do. So they think of like Tennessee and Arkansas, and they pass those really atrocious laws over here in those corners, knowing that they're going to be going through the Supreme Court and going through legal litigation the whole time. And then everybody focuses of like, oh my God, they just Jim Crowed the trans people in Tennessee. Oh my gosh, you're taking away medicine from children, which of course is absolutely right. We should be trying to protect those rights. But what ends up happening is the sports bill goes under the rug in this state. The sports bill goes under the rug in this other state. Sports bill goes into another bill. And what I mean by sports bills are sports trans banning of those bills. Because it's all a little tick clock on the game, right? It's like they're just trying to create a buffer of stopping 10 Republican senators from voting against or voting for the Equality Act. And as long as they can get as many little bills in those senator states as possible that enshrines the fact that they can be discriminatory toward an entire class of people, it completely nullifies their ability, and it also nullifies their accountability to voting against the Equality Act. I'm only doing what my state's telling me to do. I'm only doing what my laws have already said that I'm supposed to be doing. So they can say my hands are clean. I am just doing what my state wants to do. So it's not even as sinister of them actually hating trans people. It's more than that. It's about them using trans people and using very extreme angles over here to get everybody's attention away from the meat and potatoes of the conversation, which is blocking the Equality Act. And honestly, as somebody who works for a national equality organization, like it's hard for all of the equality organizations to wrap their head around, because there's just not enough people to be able to be active against it and to be able to be organized and be able to organize which states do we go after. Do we go after a state in Pennsylvania which is always going to block that type of bill, or do we go to a state in Tennessee where they're always going to pass that type of bill? And we have to try to figure out what middle ground do we win so we can edge out the Equality Act, because that is an amendment that shrines our rights. And they're gonna fight tooth and nail for it. So I know I just went on a rant. I know I always do that when it comes to this, but when we talk about the Equality Act, I don't want anybody to get focused off the prize. The prize is the Equality Act. And these little bills that are on the way there are just distractions from the reality. We're trying to get equality for all people, genders, and enshrine even stronger race protections as well. So this isn't just like equality for queer people.
I was going to say this: if the American dream, according to the Republican Party, is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, then my pursuit of happiness is making sure that I have affordable estrogen at a reasonable market rate. Now, when it comes to doing things with specific groups, I volunteer for HRC. I understand that it's really, really hard to do things, especially in Pennsylvania, when it's kind of what do we do? There's not a lot we can do. And it's also really, really weird being one of only 2 trans people to volunteer for the HRC booth that we're having at Pride this year.
The Human Rights Campaign, right?
Yeah.
Okay. When we first said that, I thought Hillary Rodham Clinton.
I mean, I did volunteer for the Clinton campaign as well.
So fair enough.
Yes.
NCTE will take you, Neo. Volunteer with us. We'll take you happily. Put you to work.
I mean, in my chat, I have constant reminders for Trans Lifeline, HRC, all these different things, transequality.org, anything really that. Okay, so my family has always voted Democrat. My mother was what is essentially a social conservative. She was very, very strictly Muslim. And so according to everything that she has ever been taught growing up in, what is essentially one city that was granted state, nationhood, I am the world's worst sinner. The only thing is that when I came out as trans and let her know, hey, all of those boys in high school that you thought I was teaching guitar to and helping get better in jazz band, we weren't exactly practicing, a lot of Zagif Yadan. We were doing a lot of other practicing, but it wasn't that. So, and she flipped. It took her a while. She's still struggling to get my pronouns right, but it's pretty interesting to see that. And then when it comes to bathrooms, we always talk about. I always think of this thought experiment, right? We we always talk about like, oh, the dreaded menace of there being somebody with a beard and a wig in the women's bathroom. But imagine what it would be like if we got a bunch of trans mask people and we took them around and said, okay, you want us to all use the bathroom that we're supposed to use that matches with what we're assigned at birth. Well, here's Buck Angel in the women's restroom. Enjoy it. I would think that conservatives would probably react pretty fast when they saw that.
To
I
be
think they
honest,
would
like
ignore it.
the bathroom thing is just policing of gender expression because
Yeah.
butch femmes have problems in bathrooms too. So like
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
it's just they're just
It,
monitoring how femoid do you look? Are you wearing good dress?
yeah,
If you're
it's
not,
Does
don't
the
be in
dress
here.
go spinny? Because
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's
so Neo. So
Dress go.
yeah.
yeah, right, Neo. So I'm gonna ask you a clarification question. Are you trying to say like I just don't see like that particular strategy being like I hate to say it, but like it would be like a sit in the back of the bus moment though for trans people. I just don't know if like going to a bathroom in Tennessee with a trans mask person would be I think that people would be like whatever, go then, and
Oh
then they would
no.
just leave.
The thing is that no matter what, you could have somebody who was the most masculine looking person in the world 95% of the time. People in the South, because for a while I lived in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Virginia. I've experienced probably the worst time in the world when I lived in Virginia. So it's like most of the time that you see men in the women's restroom in Virginia especially, they really didn't care because they just assumed that it was like some trucker like stopping off and really needed to use the bathroom real quick. The entire bathroom debate is nonsense that they try to
Yeah.
smuggle in. So I was more using it as like a kind of jokey joke that
Okay,
we always
understood.
yeah.
I was just seeing if you were actually saying that would be good, like political activism, because I'd be like, I think there's like a lot of other ways because
Oh, no.
I agree with you. Like the bathroom debate is just so lame, and I don't think that even conservatives would even say buy into it because they don't care either.
Yeah,
Especially when
I
they're
mean,
like, well, what would you be okay with a man using the same bathroom as your daughter? I'm like, yeah, like I live in a house. I live in a house where that happens constantly.
Yeah.
So like, it's fine.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
just like let
like
people
high
go to
school
the
sports.
bathroom.
They don't
Yeah.
actually care. They don't
Yeah.
care
Right.
at all about the freaking
Mhm.
sports.
Neo,
Oh
go
yeah, they
ahead.
care about
Oh,
any of these things. Like they
I-
actually don't do fucks
I-
about
I-
any
I
of
was-
these things.
I was
It's
gonna say-
just like to flex their like legislative penises. Like when was the
Mhm.
last time you saw any of these people going and really fucking cheering at a women's soccer game? They don't give two
Right.
fucks about any of these things. It's literally
was-
just to
yeah.
say you
Yeah.
like rights? Well, I don't. Skiat, like that's the
L-
whole point.
Make sure you let Neo finish.
Yeah, I was generally going to say this. Like in reality, when it comes to it, there have been more Republican lawmakers that have been busted in restrooms than there have been trans people. So if you really, really, really are concerned about protecting children from abusers or protecting children from being exposed to any sort of lewd acts or anything like that, you probably should keep them away from people with R's next to their names, not from trans people. I believe there was one case and it happened in Ireland like all of last year, and we have most of the we have an entire list of affairs on Wikipedia that involve Republican lawmakers. So yeah, statistically, you could quote me on this. You're safer in a bathroom with a trans person than you are with a Republican.
I'd take mine on that one. Yeah, that actually makes sense.
Oh, I'd absolutely take the
Yeah.
odds. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Marcy?
Oh, I was just saying. Okay, so to kind of go back to what we were talking about with like conservatives or whatever. I think that in America, particularly when it comes to trans people, the most important thing is to make sure that they don't use it as a wedge issue for the liberals like they have in Britain. A lot of like labor officials in England are like TERFs, you know. A lot of feminists in England are TERFs. A lot of like it's just a bigger scene over there than it is over here. And my mom is a person who was a Hillary Rodham Clinton liberal, and now will just like call me to tell me I'm a man sometimes. So like I feel like transphobia, because it is so rooted in like gender norms, and that's such a thing that people care so deeply about, particularly sort of eats away at people like a parasite. So I would say the most important thing on that front is making sure it doesn't affect the liberals. I don't want any fucking J.K. Rowlings in America. All right.
We'll go to Johnny.
Conversation on stream before, and it's often it tugs on my heart because for a long time testosterone was not available in Louisiana, and now it is available in Louisiana. It's just very extremely difficult to get. There are probably 3 doctors in the entire state that are offering it, and even then you have to jump through all sorts of endocrinology loopholes and things with doctors. You have to have a year's worth of doctor's notes in order to get one endocrinologist appointment to tell them that you're trans, and then even then that's like not enough a lot of the time if you don't have the right blood work, etc. I'm sure a lot of us have been through that sort of thing. So I am a gender nonconforming person who has not had the opportunity to make my physical aspect androgynous and or more masculine. I do consider myself a trans masculine person. However, there are people who, and because 2 of my best friends are trans as well, and we all just kind of congregate together, I guess, but there are people who would kill us. There are people who, if they found out that I was going to go on something that would make me look different from the way I am right now, they would not only say horrible, mean, nasty things that I don't need to hear, but also there are people who would kill me. And so it's hard for me to sit here and talk about whether or not kids can play sports, or kids can go on testosterone, or kids can go on HRT in general, when adults can't do it. It makes me upset to think that our main focus is the children, when Lord knows we don't have a lot of studies yet on exactly how a lot of these hormones and their replacement therapies affect very young children, when adults can't get it. And so I truly do wonder what our focus is. Is it on the next generation of trans people so that they can have their entire life be open and transgender? Or is it going to be this generation of adults letting themselves transition? I feel like there are many of us who are barely cracking our eggs in our 30s. And we are so focused nationally on this conversation that kids have to have testosterone and estrogen that we completely forget that these adults are probably the ones who need it most. And I don't really have a question or a thought past that. It is actually just a frustration of mine as a trans masculine person. I realize, by the way, because it has been pointed out to me before, that me being trans masculine and another person wanting to transition in their teens being trans feminine, that many of those aspects are different. I realize that. However, children playing sports and children getting on life-altering medications are 2 very different things. And I do feel that the medical care aspect ought to be more talked about with adults rather than children. And maybe that's me being conservative because I am from the South and I know y'all fucking hate us.
I used
know
to be
y'all
from
do.
South. I'm from
Hey.
Texas.
I was gonna say, Johnny, I definitely sympathize with you when I first started to transition in Virginia. the gender psychologist that I was seeing, because the informed consent clinic was about 4 hours away from the city that I lived in. So I had to go down the W path directed guidelines, where I had to socially transition first and then get on medicine. So I spent the entire 2 years of my transition not having any medication, but trying to get people to adopt to the notion fundamentally that I was a woman. And it wasn't until this year, 9 months ago, that I was able to actually get medications, because I continued it when I went to Pittsburgh here. So that I can completely understand. We are in many ways the first or second generation of people to really have mass studies done as to what medications do to us. We would have more studies on that, but the Nazis burnt all of the studies that were originally around on that. So that's one thing to always keep in mind. We had an entire institute dedicated to figuring out all of these questions, and it came down to a bunch of fascists to literally burn it down. Whenever we talk about books being burnt by the Nazi Party, that was one of those were particularly among the first things that they burnt. So we are reliving the experience that many people had. We're the first people to have mass studies on us. There's a lot of people that want to do things like MRIs to try to compare us to try to compare, oh well, does HRT make you more like what a normal woman is or something? Oh,
Okay.
Jesse.
Yeah, I would rather hear from Girl Boss, and then can I have like the last word on the actual science, please? So I'll let Girl Boss go first, and then I'm going to talk.
Okay. Thanks. So, Johnny, I just have a couple clarifying questions. I'm not trying to like debate bro you or whatever. I just have a couple questions. So for starters, I agree. I don't like that the Republicans have successfully made this a conversation about children, because the fact is they feel as though they've lost so hard on the trans people bad in general line that now they've got to start going for people's heartstrings. And the easiest way to do that is to, what about the children? What of the children? What of the children? It's always this every time there's a new civil rights issue, right? And so when we on the left and liberals and such talk about children, specifically trans children, it's because that's who the Republican Party is currently going after the most vocally. I do, however, see your point, and I think that we should be focused on legislation that protects trans adults, because some of these bills affect all trans people, and trans adults still are not safe in this country, especially those that don't pass as well, or that don't have access to medical intervention, or that are homeless. So there's a reason we talk about the children, and it's not because we're hyper woke and need to talk about the children. It's because the Republicans have steered the conversation in that direction. The clarifying question I have for you is, do you have an issue with children being put on hormone blockers? I know you said testosterone and estrogen, but that's not really the common practice for kids under like 16 or 17.
Actually, I'm aware of that. Yeah. Do I have a problem with kids being put on hormone blockers? Goodness
Yeah.
gracious. Goodness gracious. And Lord knows that Lord knows that I don't know, because I don't have the wherewithal. I didn't have the benefit of a good childhood. I don't know what it's like to grow up in a normal environment. I suffer from PTSD from 17 years of severe physical and mental child abuse. And this greatly affects my life in many ways. And so would I have been in a position to even know that I was trans at that point? No, I was dealing with way too much shit.
Right, and that's
But
you. But
yes, and that is me. Yes. And so what I have to think of when I think of this is, when I adopt my children, if they decide that they want to be on hormone blockers, will I let them? That is my position on this. By the way, I realize that it's, a big AMA or whatever. I always say the part about PTSD because I realize there are a lot of people suffering with it in chat, and I open my chat to those people. So that has
wait,
nothing to do with the conversation.
when you say when you say will I let them, is
Will I
is
let
that
them?
Yeah, would you? Like if your kid came up to you and said like, "Dad, I think I'm trans."
It depends on the child. It depends on the child. It depends on what they've been through. Keep in mind also that I will be adopting or fostering children who are teenagers because that is my chosen path in life. And therefore, if I was to have one of those teenagers come to me and say, I would like to be on hormone blockers, I believe that I am trans, I would look at their history. I would look at their history of abuse, their history of mental disorientation. I would look at their individual maturity
So I don't.
and
I
how
don't.
they interact in the world as far as their general gender expression goes. And I would go based individually on each child.
This is kind of a rabbit trail that we could go down, and I'm not gonna bother everybody with that. But I'd love to talk to you sometime. But what I want, since this doesn't really seem to apply to you
Particularly,
because puberty blockers generally aren't assigned to kids who are like over 16. I think Lupron is generally given at like 15 or younger. That I don't know if that applies to the concept of like adopting teenagers, unless they're young teenagers. But regardless, you're not like in favor of legislation to prevent children who clearly need hormone blockers from getting hormone blockers, right? Because like we make a lot of
different question. No, of course I'm not.
Okay, yeah. So that's kind of what I wanted to know. Not like, would you be okay with your kid being trans? That's it. I just wanted to ask because if you weren't in favor of like puberty blockers being available to kids, then I would have a problem with what you were saying because they are not shown to have any
Yes, I realize
lasting harms
Okay.
or.
Okay, no, I am, and of course, like yes, there is science, whatever. I wasn't talking about the science, y'all. I realize that Josie is antsy right now because they would like to clarify the science, and I realize that, Josie, and I'm about to let you go, but I feel like y'all latched on to one part of my treatise on whether or not the conversation in general in this country and others is going in the right direction, because whether we want it or not, things are going to happen incrementally. I'm sorry, leftists. I'm sorry, liberals. That's not how shit happens. Things don't happen all at the same time. Things
Wait,
are
yeah, but
going
we
to
don't.
happen
But we aren't.
No,
Excuse
stop.
me.
Let me
Excuse
go.
me. I'm so
Well,
sorry.
wait.
Things are going to happen incrementally, and so what should happen first is that trans adults
Really
should be
quickly.
Oh, no, Boba,
I'm
let me
also
finish.
wait really quick. I'm also an incrementalist. I believe things happen
fabulous.
incrementally.
You know what I
No,
was
I know.
about to say?
Wait. Stop, please let me finish
No.
the sentence.
Let her finish, and then we'll go to Josie and Sunny, please. Marcy.
Okay, I'm also an incrementalist. Like I think that things change incrementally. Sure, we are not the ones in charge of where the conversation goes, though. The conversation right now is about trans kids because conservatives have decided to make it about trans kids. If we want to go, oh yeah, well, what about trans adults? Then we leave the door open for the legislation they're currently writing, which is about trans kids. That's why we're talking about trans kids. It's not our decision. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. First, I'm gonna talk for a second, okay? I'm gonna and first though, however, first, Johnny, I don't think you've ever said that you were trans publicly in my space before. Is that the first time you've come out as trans mask? Officially?
Definitely not.
Definitely not. Okay, so I'm just
I don't
wanted to
remember
acknowledge
hearing
that
it
space.
either.
I want to acknowledge that space for you, Johnny. I think it's amazing that you are like I didn't know you were trans mask. I had no idea. I knew
consider
you were
myself trans. Ooh,
yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. We'll
Yeah.
leave it at that for right now. That's
Yeah,
okay.
for sure. Like I don't need more than that. You identify as trans. That's fine. So first, I was born and raised in Texas, so I get it. I voted for Bush. I voted for McCain for crying out loud. I was in the Navy for patriotism and stuff like that. I've lost relationships with family members, and there's places in my hometown I will not go because I'm afraid I'll die. So I just want to relate with you there too. So first, there was a couple things that came up. They're not fighting for adults enough. You're right. In fact, when you have to get gender affirming care, I have to get 2 letters from psychologists before I can get the surgeries. Luckily, I live in an informed consent state where I could, as an adult, say, yes, I know what is happening to my body. I am consenting to this process without a therapist note. And that's not in every state, but a lot of states do have informed consent. And I'm sorry you don't live in an informed consent state. Secondly, I don't think this should be a fight against conservative versus leftist values. I think in the reality here, we all agree that we should affirm and allow trans affirming care, which is medically necessary, which, Johnny, I know you know the suicide rates of younger people, and if they don't get gender affirming care, that their suicidal rates are well above 50%. And if you get the gender affirming care for these children, we have longitudinal studies. We know this. It's like generational time periods that suicidality drops for a trans child who receives gender affirming care and a supportive family or friend by 86%, which is no more than their cis peers. So I think we can all agree on those type of things. Okay, so it's not necessarily the discourse, right? The discourse exists the way that it exists, but I will tell you something. Okay, as a trans researcher and somebody who works for an equality organization that is fighting on all cylinders of all things, we have Dr. Rachel Levine, the first trans woman ever appointed and confirmed by the Senate, or appointed by the president, confirmed by the Senate, who's the assistant Department of Health secretary. Okay, what is she going to be working on? Well, I already know a lot of the things she's going to be working on, which is making sure that we have transgender medicine as an actual school of medicine. Because, for example, we have a school of oncology, we have a school of cardiology, we have a school of epidemiology, but we don't have, or I'm not epidemiology, wrong words. But I'm not very good with medical.
None of us are doctors. No one's going to know.
But anyways, we don't have school of transgender medicine. We also don't have a governing board for surgeries either. So we're trying to get those things so we can have better quality of care across the entire country as regards to all adults. We just passed the Barstock Act, which also does affect trans people and their rights to employment and also being seen by doctors. We have in Joe Biden's administration, he has already reformed a lot of the things that Trump has done that is allowing trans people to receive medicine again when they were going to be turned away by hospitals who said they were going to turn them away. The fact of the matter is we are making strides, leaps and bounds in adult transgender medicine and equality rights behind the backs of Republicans and conservatives, because they don't have the right in those schools to be able to say, no, we can't provide medical care. For adults, it's a lot harder for them. So where they start is children. Meanwhile, liberal activists and trans activists, trans policy writers, trans researchers across the country are passing massive changes going in through the executive body right now through the presidency and also throughout state legislations that are actually pro-LGBT, right? And especially with the capital T, right? And so it's not that we're not working on these things. The fact of the matter, it's the opposite. We've seen more growth in those arenas than we've ever seen in our history before. Now, the issue is that they're affecting children, right? And then a lot of people feel children. Oh my God, children. Like there are kids right now in Arkansas that September 1st will stop receiving their prescriptions being filled for the medicines that their parents and medical providers and pediatric psychiatrists have all agreed on. This is like a team environment. It's the same thing that would happen if you had a kid that was in cancer, right? You would have a team of doctors going in and saying, hey, this is the best thing for this person. The parents still have to sign the level of consent. And yeah, you have to tell the child that if you take this medicine, it's going to make you sick. And they have to say yes to that too, right? So it's not like we're changing the way medical science already exists, because it's already been a process. This is already proven science. This is the medical processes that we're trying to preserve are the ones that already exist. And the reason that people are getting upset is because states like Texas where I'm from, by the way, and was raised there, states like Texas want to redefine child abuse to include gender affirming care. And that includes not just hormones or puberty blockers, that includes allowing your kid to socially transition at 9, okay? And going and wearing a dress way before medicine's even introduced in the child's life, right? Like they're seeing that as a form of child abuse. And I think that's why we get our hair on fire. We're like, oh my God, they're going to hurt children, because we know from the science, what I said before, that if we don't provide this life-saving care, that kids are going to die. So you can look in Arkansas, for example, suicide hotline rates have already skyrocketed because kids are afraid they're not going to receive their medicine and they don't want to live anymore. Like, and I know that because I'm a member of the Community for Lived Experiences board for the Suicide Prevention Resource Center nationally, right? So these are actual things that we're talking about. So it's not the fact that trans adults aren't getting their medicine, because it's taken me a lot and I have to pay up front and I have to go through all this shit, and I'm 34 years old. I came out last year. So right on to the trans 30-year-olds. I'm in that trans 30-year-old club right there with you, right? So it's not that we're not here. It's not that it's not happening. The issue is there is a community under attack that we have data to prove that they will die if they start going through the irreversible changes of their assigned puberty at birth, right? If I had trans inclusive healthcare and education in school, I would have been able to question for the first time, am I really a boy? A question that plagued me from 8 years old. Nobody actually said that that's a normal human question, and it's important to unpack that and find out who you are. And I don't know what would have happened at 8 years old. I assume that I would have said, give me the dress, let me grow my hair out, because I love dresses and I like my hair. So I know that didn't change. That's always been inside of me, right? And so we have to look at it in the framework of not conservative versus liberal, because Johnny, I'm right there with you. We both want trans rights, regardless of what aisle you sit on. We both will
Not
be
sure what I
fighting
said about
together. What was that?
I'm just not sure what I said about conservative versus liberal. I was speaking on
Oh.
when I spoke on that, I was speaking on what my experience is living in the deep south as a
Mhm.
trans person. I was
Mhm.
not questioning medical science. I was
Mhm.
not questioning whether or not I would allow people to ban trans kids with permission to go on hormone blockers. That was never part.
Right.
None of frankly, any of what y'all said really addressed
Johnny,
my concern.
I did not make any of those accusations or claims, and I'm not trying to pass any shade to Girl Boss or or anybody that said anything.
I'm not passing shade. I don't do that.
I'm not trying to pass shade to them. I'm talking me. I said I statement. I'm not trying to pass shade to the other people either. So what I'm trying to say is that I agree with you that because it's such a hot issue and it's such a sensitive spot, that even when it comes to just a little bit of like, wait, are you against trans health? If people get upset, right? Now, no, we're not trying to say you said that. That's why I wanted to talk to you and clarify the points the way that I clarified the points. You see how I said, thank you for coming out as trans. We're on the same side. I'm going to tell you the things that we're fighting for on the things that you were afraid actually talking about, which is adult trans medicine, which I want because I'm a trans adult. And I just want to make sure that everybody, including the status quo of the medical system that is already in place for kids, is preserved, and that we continue to do the research that we're doing, because I work with a lot of clinicians, people who are doing longitudinal studies that have been doing this work for decades. And the last thing they want is the government to come in and intervene to break the way they've been doing these studies, because they need this research to keep going on. And the fact is, no child has been damaged from puberty blockers. No child has been damaged from hormone blockers. So the science is still ongoing. And we've been so methodical that people have complained that it's not good enough, that people wanted to be more aggressive, but doctors push back because doctors say, no, I wanted to take my medicine a different way. And the doctor said, you better take it the way I'm telling you. And I had to push back and forth my doctor, and I followed my doctor's advice. Right. So it does exist. Right. And so status quo is helping children. Status quo is helping adults. What we are fighting for as trans activists, beyond liberal or conservative, is the right to ensure that we all have access to medicine, and regardless of what age, with medical guidance and parental consent when needed. Because I don't think anybody here is fighting for kids to get medicine without medical professional guidance, right? Nobody's advocating for that. No school nurses here are giving out testosterone. I tell you, because that shit is hard to get and expensive. So they're not giving that shit to anybody. They don't even give you Advil, okay? So like, these are the things that we need to talk about. So Johnny, I just want to say that I care about you deeply, and I know that you're an ally and you are one of us. You're fam. Come on, you're fam. Like, and that's really what it comes down to. So I just wanted to just leave you with that and let you know that I care about you deeply. I think we're all on the same side here. I don't want to go tit for tat with you, because I think we're on the same side. And just to let you know that as a trans activist, as somebody who is also a trans researcher and policymaker, we're fighting as hard as we can. And while the Republicans, their backs are turned and trying to fight on the trans kids issue, guess what we be doing? We be passing, getting trans assistant departments of secretary health, right? Assistant to the Department of Secretary, health secretary. I can't speak right now. We're getting those type of people in there. We're getting trans people in actual places of power. We're getting elected. We're going in there while they're still focusing on trans bathrooms. We're gaining power.
Well,
And that's
the
what we
poor
have
ones,
to do.
well, I'm so sorry, but people in Louisiana are dying. People in
I
Louisiana are
agree,
literally
yeah.
getting hung by
You can
trees.
do
So
you can do
sorry if I don't want to worry about whether or not the kids can get pills if they're going to get killed by other people first.
I think we can fight for all the same things, though. I don't think it's a zero-sum game, Johnny.
I'm talking about what I'm concerned about. I'm not trying to argue with y'all. I am opening up a dialogue, a dialectic, if you will, on why I am upset about the majority of the discourse being dominated by what about the children. I was not arguing with science. I was not arguing with any of you. And I very much appreciate all of you being so concerned for not only my well being, but for the well being of trans people in general. But I am saying what I think.
Let's
Well,
go
I
to.
think the
Let's,
reason why
hold on.
why
Let's go
there
to.
is
Hold on. We'll go to Sunny, then Neil, and then Kat.
I'll be short here. I know a lot of people have things that they want to say. I just wanted to say that I appreciate Johnny speaking on their experience. I think that in discussions about these issues that, you know, there's always the place where it's happening that is worse than where we are. Up in Canada, we always talk about, oh, well, at least we're not like America. Like, oh my God, like Americans, like they're so bad. And still up here, like we don't have healthcare in place to help trans kids. Our institutions are flawed and don't help trans kids. We have the exact same groups of parents coming together and being oh, gender identity in schools, and trying to demolish the safeguards that we have in place to protect these people. And that often the narratives and the stories of the people who are living in these other places that we only know horror stories of get drowned out and get smothered up. And I really appreciate hearing Johnny's perspective on that and speaking on how it affected their mental health. That is a really big component of this that I would like to touch upon if we come there. I'm concerned with the self-perpetuating cycle of relying on trans kids to change their transphobic parents and their transphobic communities, because the harm that is done to those children is astronomical. And I know that we're all aware of the statistics, but beyond the statistics, those are stories, those are lives, those are people. And I just want to say that I appreciate Johnny, standing up for those narratives, even though, some ideas, some opinions around them might be different depending on what side any of us fall on issues, but that, you know, we're all advocating for something. We're probably advocating mostly for ourselves and our communities and the places where we come from. And I appreciate having the space to hear all of yours.
Let's go to Neo, then Kat, then Marcy, because she never hears what I call her name, and then Maddie.
All right. First of all, I do fundamentally want to agree. I believe that even if somehow every child of the Republican Party somehow came out as transgender, there's no possible way that they would all immediately change their mind and have a Dick Cheney, Peter meeting Christ at the crossroads type moment. Fundamentally, that's just not going to happen. One thing that I want to thank Johnny for bringing up is something that made me look into a little bit deeper. Reading a study, the Toomey, Syverson, and Shremko study shows that in general, when normally all of us here, and this is going to make me, okay, so I have 2 points. This is going to make me sound a lot like Samantha Banana. That's why I put my name as Samantha Banana Jr. I love you, Samantha. Please don't ban me. Anyways, when we talk about suicide rates among teenagers, the one us as femme presenting or femme trans people, we fundamentally cannot exclusively say that we know the experience that Johnny's going through, especially because most of the suicide rates, at least according to this most recent study, which I pulled up, which is published in the Pediatrics Journal, says that 50.8% of all suicide rates are attempted by female to male transitioners, followed up by female to gender nonconforming transitioners. The actual lowest rates of suicides are pretty equal among male to female, 29.9 to 27.9%.
Can you link that? I would like to
yes.
see that study.
Yeah,
thanks.
definitely. Here,
I'm a trans research nerd, so like you give me a study with trans stuff in, and I want to see it.
There we
right
go.
away.
She's like, ooh, for work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm all for saying that we need to provide that kind of stuff. Now, when it comes to the topic of puberty blockers, we always like to say like, oh, puberty blockers have 0 to no effects. When it's like, we honestly don't know. Like, we've seen reports of ballerinas who have taken them specifically to compete in the Olympics, and they're completely unable to conceive children at this point. So we cannot say 100% without a doubt that there are 0 side effects when it comes to puberty blockers. The efficacy of prescribing a child something that comes with such an unknown quantity seems to me a bit bizarre. And the fact that there's a lot of people that say, oh, well, you don't just walk into a doctor's office and get medicines handed out to you. Fundamentally, most states will allow you to do that now. Informed consent is literally you walk in, a doctor asks you to fill out a piece of paper, asks you if you pretended to read it, and they'll give you a prescription for spironolactone and Esterol. Now, when you normally go to a psych or a gender therapist, they'll probably monitor you a bit better than somebody that's like a Planned Parenthood, especially here where they're just handing stuff out and then saying, go about it on your own, talk to your GP about it as you go along. That's one thing why I'm thankful for at least transitioning in Virginia, where I at least had to go to an endocrinologist. I know I had it a little bit lucky because without that, I wouldn't have found out. Well, there's a bunch of factors that lead me to finding out, but I am actually XXY, so I have an extra X chromosome at the beginning of my genome. So technically, I guess I belong on more of like an intersex panel. And that also explains why when I was a child, I was prescribed testosterone, which, as most people like to forget, we commonly sell over the counter. Like T-gel, 1.5% is sold over the counter, especially when it comes to healthcare in regards to men losing any sort of vitality or virality that they believe that they have. We will so make that shit available. Like, we love that. Like, the fact that the fact that sildenafil was downgraded from being a heart attack preventing medication that could literally cause you to have heart attacks if you don't have very specific heart ailments to literally being the boner popper medicine shows you that when it comes to male virality, we will literally make any damn thing
I feel
available.
attacked right now.
Toxic masculinity is
I think it's
Where did you paste the research? Where did you paste that research?
It's in the StreamYard chat.
Yeah, there's a private thing
Oh,
there.
yeah.
Next time, just put like in a Discord in our group DM, just easier that way. But that's fine.
Yep.
Yeah.
I want to say though, Johnny, stay based, stay cool, and stay looking poppin'.
Hey, and I don't want people to think I'm mad. I like to, tell people I'm a little bit off kilter when it comes to my general tone most of the time. I try to stay firm, and when I raise my voice it's because I would like people to not interrupt me and to be heard. It's not because I'm angry. I realized there was one person in the chat who thought I was angry at y'all, and that is not the case. I'm not always a person who shows an excessive happiness.
Let's go to Katarana, then
Wait,
Marcy,
can I say
then
one
Maddie.
really quick thing?
Okay,
That
go.
someone in my chat said that the U.S. military spends $84 million on Viagra every year. So
Yeah,
just
that's
think
true.
about it.
There's a lot of laws when it comes to the. Sorry for cutting you off, Katarina. I was gonna say,
Voters, like,
the-
come on.
the U.S. military spending budget, you cannot actually get in if you have a heart disease or anything like that. Yet, or if you have ADHD. Yet, once you're in, you can essentially get anything that you want, so long as it helps you keep that boner up and ready to go around and dick some Iraqis.
Okay. Look,
Right.
boners are important. Boner lives matter, and I don't know what is this boner hate going on here. I won't
Oh,
have
boy.
it. I won't have it. Thank you for that, Katarana.
Do you even have the right to speak on this panel?
No, apparently
Not.
not. Go ahead.
Okay.
Everybody, sorry.
Mhm.
I did want to just note, like, I think a lot of reason why so much of the discourse does shift to talking about kids is because the Republicans always bring it there. I think we would be able to have a lot more of a conversation about like how everybody else is affected, such as people that are adolescents, older adults, young adults, etc. If it wasn't for the fact that like a lot of the discourse always gets shifted back towards younger, so that people can go ahead and like bring about the whole panic conversation. So unfortunately, like we're just kind of stuck there, and for some reason, like the right always gets to like kind of control the discourse on different types of social issues, because as long as they say we're going to talk about this age group, then that's where we
Pretty
have to go
base
ahead and like
study.
pardon. Oh, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm looking at the wrong study. I'm trying to look at the study. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I'm like, whoa, this study's great. I started nerding out on it. Sorry, I was trying to figure out. Apologies.
No, you're good.
Sorry.
Yeah, so like we're always like just consistently stuck in certain like I guess facets of the discourse, which I think probably is part of the whole like alt-right playbook YouTube series too. I'm pretty sure there was like a whole point brought about this, that like there's always just control of the narrative that's always going on. So unfortunately, like a lot of people there is a lot to be said about all these like how HRT is not necessarily being given to everybody that needs it, but since the right keeps on saying but the kids, so then we have to be like yeah the kids, and then everybody else gets left behind, which is always unfortunate. um yes, and then I just want to ask for my, I guess, everybody else that's here, Johnny, what pronouns should we be using for you? I just want to make
Uh,
sure.
sorry, I was muted. I use any and all pronouns, but they are my preferred.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Thank you for asking. I think Marcy.
Yeah.
had something to
It's
say.
Marcy, then Maddie. Marcy, you are muted. An excellent streamer.
Oh, streamer
nonetheless.
move.
Yes, the old PrimeCayes strategy. Okay.
I don't know why
So,
this is mine. This is not mine. This is not my
I-
thing. Okay. All right. Anyway.
That's what you. No, you always do that.
No,
you
I
always
don't.
like
Okay. All right. Whatever.
I can confirm.
Own it, own it, own it.
own it. Just own it. Oh, Maddie, I just noticed the cat ears. Nice. And okay. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of come out and say, Johnny, I'm sorry. I wasn't like insinuating or like accusing you of being pro legislation to keep kids from getting hormone blockers. I don't think anyone on the panel is in favor of that. I just needed to clarify a couple of things about your position because I wasn't like quite sure what I was hearing. Pretty unobjectionable though. I mean, yeah, trans adults are. I'm 21. I started transitioning like 2 years ago, so I don't know if that makes me a trans adult or a trans kid or a trans teenager or whatever. But that I understand like both sides of the issue. The Republicans have decided to make the current conversation about trans kids, but we still haven't fully gotten equality for trans adults. And I would argue that that's true of like the progression of this entire fucking argument. First the Republicans are against like gay marriage, and then when that falls out of favor, like now they're against trans people because bathroom, and then trans people because bathroom falls out of favor, and now it's trans people because think of the children. But they're not actually like getting rid of those other issues. They're just not talking about them as much. So yeah, it is still a problem for trans adults. I don't think trans adults have it easy in the United States. I'm a trans adult. We don't.
Yeah.
I also just want to clarify. I don't claim to know the experiences of trans masculine people. I don't even know how that got brought up. But yep.
Yeah.
Hmm.
The only time trans adults ever come up in Republican words are when they're detransitioners that regret it.
Oh yeah,
And
there's so
and-
few detransitioners who detransition because they regret it, and like
Yeah.
those get they got all the fucking media, all the mics pointed at them, and then the fucking
Yeah.
detransitioners who detransition because of family discrimination or religious discrimination or because they couldn't get their medication or whatever. Radio silence. We never hear about them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Fuck it. Fuck the
It's
whole
the same-
detransition rate thing.
It's the same
Yeah.
people that are like, being gay is a choice. Like, I was once a gay and then decided to not be, and like, look at me now, and it's like, oh, sweetheart.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, okay, Milo, have fun.
Yeah, Milo. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Also, by the way, this
yeah.
entire time I've been mesmerized by Katarana's like living in Tron world light show. Just like,
Oh, I
yeah.
love that.
Very nice.
Neo, I wanted to say something to you really quick too. I never said that hormone blockers have like zero side effects. They have side effects. Any medication does. But obviously, and I know you hold this position too, if a kid is showing signs of like gender dysphoria as determined by a psychiatrist and a gender therapist and like a doctor and also the kid and like in conversation with their parents, then yeah, that kid should probably be on hormone blockers in the same way that a kid who's depressed should be on antidepressants. We prescribe medications with side effects for all sorts of things.
I would definitely agree with you on that, Marcy. The thing is that we tend to, at least the media tends to focus on kids that have yet to be psychologically evaluated and tend to focus on things like what's his name? Something is amazing. Where they're like, oh, look at this kid. This kid's so awesome.
Yeah.
Like honestly, when we need better optics.
Is Jazz a trans kid or is Jazz a drag queen? I don't know the detail there.
She's trans.
She's trans.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I wasn't sure.
Yeah. I am
the-
Jazz. Yeah.
Like the thing is though is that like we often focus on people that go through and basically just try to sidestep things when there are a lot of children that could speak out publicly on the fact that yes, I had to speak with my therapist. Yes, we had very long talks. Yes, we know things. Because the more that we have people in the media that aren't just like, made for television shows, for entertainment, for like wine moms to sit around and watch while they're regretting every decision that they made, like getting pregnant in college or whatever it is wine moms do. The thing is we need to have actual people in representation that are us. So it's like we need to have a full-on sit-down CNN interview with children that have gone through and talked to their psych and been like, look, okay, I'm not just some dumb kid that thought, I like Barbies over Transformers, as the majority of America seems to believe. Like, that's not an indicator of our gender. Like, I solely identified as a woman almost my entire life, and I will say this: girls' toys fucking sucked.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you though. That. Oh, there it goes. There it goes. Oh yeah, no, okay. I agree with you that cynical exploitation of an adorable member of a marginalized demographic for the enjoyment of like PMC liberals is never the best approach. Obviously, I prefer that to shows that demonize us, but yeah, that's not the best. However, I don't think that a CNN sit-down interview with the one true trans kid who has gone and seen the therapist and done the whole 9 yards is going to change the minds of conservatives. I don't think we're going to own them with facts and logic on this one. They just think trans people icky. And I used to think it was more complex than that. And then I've lived in Idaho my whole life. I know what Republicans are like. all of you who've dealt with them know what they're fucking like. It's they think trans people are icky. At least in the upper echelons of government. In the like conservative base, a lot of them were just tricked by those people. But that's
I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say this: we don't need to convince conservatives of anything because conservatives are functionally reactionary. What we need to convince is the wine moms that hey, it's okay and this is an actual realistic thing, and you should go out and vote for it or vote against it when it comes to your state. Because the problem is that people who often are like, I'm with her, I support these kind of things, trans rights, they use all of these empty slogans, and yet when it comes time to voice their opinion on something, fundamentally they fail. So we need to stop worrying about changing conservatives' minds. I could literally not give a fuck if Donald Rumsfeld believes that I'm real or not. I want my neighbor who's sitting there with her soccer van that has a Hillary Clinton sticker on there to go out and say, you know what? I'm going to vote against the Allegheny City official who believes that fundamentally it's okay to lock up trans women in the male section of jail, like what happened to me over the summer.
right.
Like,
I agree with that, but I
like-
just don't. I think that the issue of like how we're gonna convince the wine moms or whatever. I think that any like positive representation of trans people in media, regardless of how deep it dives into the like medical gatekeeping we go through to get our medication, is going to be good in that respect. Any like normalization of trans people, trans adults, trans kids, just trans people in media showing up as characters. We've had this conversation before, who aren't like solely defined by being trans or like solely the reality TV show star or whatever because they're trans, but like just a wider normalization of trans people. I think that's what we should go for, and not necessarily the Anderson Cooper sit down 60 Minutes interview with one trans kid.
Let's go to Maddie, then Josie. And I'll just say for the record that yeah, boys' toys were always the best. Like we always had the best toys. Like they like
It was such
amazing
bullshit.
toys, right?
Yeah.
I'll say
You guys
that.
had video games, bruh.
We did.
It was
I'm sorry. Look,
such
I didn't design the rules, but we have video games. I will say that Easy Bake Ovens actually looked pretty fun. But other than that, and
They were Easy Bake Ovens were the shit. Oh my
and
god!
they worked.
Yeah.
Like, you could legit
do you,
make
I
do you
know.
remember? Do you remember the Easy Bake Ovens, right? So they came up with Easy Bake Ovens, right? And they were such a massive hit, right? But like, gotta get boys to play with them, right? Okay, all right. Here's what we're gonna do. We're going to paint them blue, right? We're gonna paint them blue. And then we're gonna make like not food, right? Because like that's not what boys do, I guess, right? Unless they're chefs.
Boys
but like
don't
they'll
eat
make
grub.
they'll make.
Do you remember the
spiders.
metal
Remember
ones?
this? Remember, like
What
they
about-
had like spiders,
Yeah!
right? Like that they would pull, and then you could like
Oh my
take out the
God.
spider, and then you could
just
scare your sister
unlocked a
with that.
memory for
Yeah.
me.
What?
I
Okay,
don't
remember
right.
this
I
too.
remember
Yeah,
that.
they're
I
like,
remember
what
that at
do
all.
boys like? Oh, gross bugs. Okay,
Like
what
snot
if?
or like
Creepy
flies.
crawly.
Why did they?
Time.
Wait, deadass. Why did
Or
they market?
fly was a thing.
Like, why did we decide as a culture that gross shit gets to be marketed towards boys? Why? I feel like
Yeah,
girls are
I'm
just
like,
as
go-
gross as boys. We
Go
are
into a
gross.
girl's bathroom. This is why maybe men should once in a while check out a girl's bathroom, and I'll just be like, let me dispel you of the notion that girls are not as gross. I'm like, have you seen a bathroom that two sisters share?
Yeah.
And like have to,
Or
yeah.
the idea,
Or a
the
house
idea that the
full
fucking,
of girls.
the idea that the women's
Public
restroom.
bathrooms for women. You've never been to a Burlington Coat factory until you saw period blood on the wall. Am I right, fellas?
True.
Yeah. Woo!
The idea that like the women's restroom at Denny's is going to be like this pristine water fountain, like shag rug area, and not like a shit spattered hellhole, just like the men's restroom, is such a fake concept we've invented in our minds as a culture. You know.
Let's
No,
Neil.
not true.
Neil, you're gonna say something real quick, and then we'll go to Maddie.
Real quick, I was gonna say, if it comes to a PlayStation or an Easy Bake Oven, give me a fucking PlayStation. And also, do you remember when they went from all right, guys like creepy worms to let's just full on go out to have it be like a zinc pour machine where it'd come with little molds, and it was like you just mold this crap into this Easy Bake Oven, and then
I
all of a
vaguely
sudden it
remember
turned.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was on TV for like 6 months, then it got
Vaguely
banned
remember
because
this.
like people are like burning the hell out of themselves.
Oh,
Also,
Yeah.
when Kat gets back, I want to know if she fights for the user.
She can hear you. But yeah, okay, great. I'm sure she'd enjoyed that. All right, let's go to Maddie and then Josie.
Yeah, I mean, I first of all, I wanted to say to Johnny, like, thank you for being so forthcoming in sharing your perspective. And also, I think it is equally critical that we remember that, like, we can talk about, I think with a lot of issues, it's always like, oh, but think of the kids, because that's such an easy, like, emotional hook to get people thinking about. But the reality is that, like, there are so many adults too who are suffering and struggling and dying and whose lives are on the line for this. And I think it's really
Katana,
good.
the final frontier.
Oh my goodness. But yeah, like so I just wanted to say thank you. Like, me and like everyone in my chat were like, oh my God, Johnny's incredible. And like, yeah. So just thank
Hey,
you
thank
for yeah, being so forthcoming about it and sharing, because I know, like, it's often really, really hard to open up, even on a panel like this where you're around like generally like
Mm.
supportive people, but like it's still really hard.
No,
Because you're
this is I don't know. This is
well, then I'm
what I
then I'm
talk about
envious.
often.
Okay.
This is something I talk about often because I am what I guess I would call a mental health advocate. I speak about PTSD as well as being a transmasculine person quite often on my stream as well as on this panel. Because at first I wasn't sure if I wanted to do this panel or not because I wasn't sure if I met the qualifications of femme. So.
Mm. Yeah, no, and again, like, I know we're talking about like, well, how do we like normalize these things, right? Like, and I think so much of it, I've said this before on the panel, but I don't think any of you like recognize just how impactful you can be and the power that you have as streamers and being here and being open about your experiences, the good and the bad, because we're not just trying to sugarcoat our lives here and talk about how everything's perfect and whatever. Like, we're being honest about the times when we've struggled and when things were shit. Because I think when other people who maybe find themselves in a similar position look at that and hear those stories, it humanizes things and it makes them feel connected. And I think, the way we went over the soccer moms is they just need to have like some cool trend setting like trans Karen who like makes funny Facebook posts that are like, it's wine o'clock, ladies, and then like the soccer mom contingent will fall in love because
Me.
they'll be like, one of us, and that's how we do it. So I don't know. I think the more we see them in pop culture, the more we see a variety of gender identities and sexual orientations, like, just the more you see it as it's commonplace. And when their sexuality and when their gender identity isn't like the defining characteristic of their character in like a series or whatever, where it's just like, oh yeah, that's just who they are. It isn't like a plot point. That's when we'll know that like it's having an impact. Sorry. I thought that like having a ring pop would make it so I don't like cough, and I'm wrong.
Okay, well that's
So
an interesting that's
thank
an
you so
interesting thought
much.
process, but okay, sure,
Yeah,
great.
I mean, water is great. That's what we use to
Ugh.
hydrate,
Yeah.
not sugar. But good try,
What
Maddie.
flavor, though?
I beg to differ. What flavor?
Okay.
Mm.
Dude,
All
if
right,
you're,
so-
I'm telling you, if you don't go to the bathroom and it doesn't look like lemonade, I don't want to go to your bathroom. That's all I have to say.
That's a good point. A good point.
The only time that's acceptable is if you're trying to pass a drug test.
Yes,
Mm.
that's
I
right.
just want to say
then it
this
better
is
be clear.
discrimination against potheads, all right? I'm the biggest pothead on the panel, and I pee clear like a fucking
Are you
pristine,
sure?
Prove it.
pristine, gorgeous lake, all right? Clear piss rights. That's what I'm
Girl
here to
boss,
say.
prove
But at what
it.
cost?
As
Here
I
we
said,
go, girl boss.
But at what cost? I don't drink anything but water, and I haven't slept in a
Oh.
year, all right?
There you go.
Ooh.
Okay.
Marcy,
That's real power.
Marcy,
That's real power.
Marcy, you say that, and yet I'm the one here with the THC vape.
Oh,
Fair. Yeah, for legal reasons, all I have is the vape with the chamomile, rose petals, and lavender in it.
That's true
I'm
because
just
Idaho
for
do be like that.
So
yeah, for
uh,
medical
Wait,
reasons of Pennsylvania, it's completely legal.
so
quick question. Is this a like dude friendly room? I know some places don't like it when I know some people don't like the word dude. I just use it for everybody, but like is that
That's
okay?
I
fine.
use
It's
yeah,
fine.
You can
dude's fine.
yeah, you can call me dude if we're friends, which we are. But if you're like a rando on Twitter and you're like, okay, dude, I'm gonna be a little sus.
Yeah.
Fair
Yeah,
enough.
Right.
that's
That's
the
Okay.
point.
fair
fair.
enough.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
Thank you.
fair.
I've
Okay.
been called out on that
Thank
you.
before on Twitter, by the way. Sorry. Like, just as a Californian, like, we just use dude interchangeably. And I was actually called out where it's like, hey, maybe, like, if you don't know the person, they won't know that. So, like, try to not say it. And I'm like,
I've
that's
had
a
to
really
unlearn.
good point. Yeah.
I've had to
Yeah,
unlearn doing that too
yeah.
because I'm from the Pacific Northwest too. So yeah, just
Yeah,
totally.
so
Yeah,
we just,
I'm
yeah.
Floridian, so like
Yeah.
you know. Meanwhile, while I'm getting arrested for weird shit, I tend to say dude. So I just need to check. Wait.
Okay.
Oh, really? Last thing before I let you speak, Prime. I know this is your panel, but it's called Amazon Lily, so get fucked. I'm sorry, Neo. I heard something about users while I was playing
Yeah.
hopscotch over in the corner.
Do you fight for the users, or have you gone to the Rinsler side?
May I understand?
She doesn't know Tron. Never mind. She doesn't
Oh.
know Tron.
Okay.
California girl,
okay.
you need to
I saw
watch Tron.
I saw
Both
Tron
the
Legacy.
version and the
Yeah.
legacy
Yeah.
Oh.
version.
I saw
It-
the one
it-
with really, really old CGI fake Jeff Bridges. I saw that one.
Hell
Yeah,
yeah.
that's
I
the
would-
tagline. That's practically
When-
the tagline. I fight for the user. Like
Yeah,
what?
when-
Sorry, I was too busy paying attention to Olivia Wilde. I didn't hear anything else. I was
Fair
hearing
enough.
it.
Don't
When-
Also,
blame you there.
so understandable.
When Tron Legacy came out, I went and seen it in IMAX 3D. I was super, super high the minute the 3D kicked in when they went into the userscape or to the grid. It was
Yeah.
mind blowing.
Let's-
Also,
The first 3D
Ri-
movie
Riz-
I ever saw was Monsters vs. Aliens, and it sucked in 3D and it sucks in 2D.
let's finish off with Josie and Sunny. We'll go on to our next topic.
Valid point.
So I'm gonna get a prop where it's gonna just say hard pill to swallow. It's gonna be a giant pill, and it's gonna be that thing. But I had to go. This was a point made ages ago, but I want to go back to it, and it's been written on my white pad or yellow pad here, and I want to talk about it. So Neo, you made a point about voting, and I just want to talk about something real quick, like these people in these rural areas are not voting for trans rights. They're voting for like elected officials, and they have no idea what their local officials are voting for. It's not even an issue on their radar. It's like candidates aren't going door to door and being like, here's all the issues that I care about, and it's like an entire page or book, and it's like, here you go. These are all the positions that I'm going to be voting on in the future. To have fun. A lot of times it's about like who that person is and how, so that goes into a bigger process, because like when you bring up voting, like my head just explodes into a lot of different collages of different things that could happen. So when I think of like voting and like voting for like trans rights and specifically, it's a really hard process because a lot of times people can only know how to vote D or R. They don't know, right? If they're a single issue voter, they're going to vote for the D. That's just how it's going to be. If they're voting for equality, they're going to vote for the Democrat if they care enough even to do that, right? So I always am like, if you want to do like political activism for trans rights, sometimes it's easier to get a candidate that is going to like stand for that right and just get like one of those people in the state house as fast as you can. Like, okay, it's like, okay, we can't win all of these people, but we have an open seat here. Let's focus all of our resources there. So then we can have somebody who stands for you in the house that says, hey, I got an entire portfolio of trans bills here. Let's push them through. And then like, you never say like, this person's just going to be fighting for trans rights. You just know they're going to fight for equality. So those are like a few of the strategies that you can do. But like, really a lot of times these bills come up early in the cycle. So when did we have their last election? It was last year, right? When are they going to be talking about these trans rights later? No. People have political short memories, and they're not even going to remember, because the times that legislative session happens is early in the spring. The political cycle's later in the winter or fall. So nobody remembers anything. And that's like a symptom of the broken system as a whole. I wish that voters voted on trans issues more directly. I wish that voters can just be like, I'm just going to vote for this thing, because it's not that easy. And as a campaigner for like a decade, like I stood for like 3 different candidates in San Diego, and every single one of them voted against the black candidate running for the president of the council when they were on the council. Every single one of them, every single effing one of them that all the progressives fought for, they voted against the black woman that was going to be an awesome president for the city council here. So it's like the system is not as simple. I wish it was as simple as like, hey, pay attention and vote for the right person. But it's like so many structures and infrastructures have to go into place before that's an easy question for a person at the door.
It might not be as simple as that directly when we have a candidate that we're solely pushing for translate rights. But generally, if we have a progressive candidate, we could kind of assume that they're going to be trans. Like, we don't need...
Nope. That's not
But,
true.
okay. Okay, so here's the thing, too. You also said that we generally don't care about election cycles. We just had our primary in Pennsylvania on the 18th of May. So
That's
I was out door knocking for us to ban no-knock warrants in Allegheny County. So we still do have a potential cycle going on. And
Yeah.
I mean, any progressive candidate that's going to, like, we don't need somebody to go up and say, I want to fight specifically for trans rights. We want a candidate that we know is going to fight for trans rights, but it's also going to appeal to somebody else out in like the boonies. Like somebody out in like Louisiana who is like, okay, we're experiencing massive economic downturns in a lot of our parishes right now. We need to make sure that we have up-to-date healthcare. We need to make sure that we have proper Medicaid for the people who are on it. We need to make sure that we have a proper we need to institute a proper way of making sure that things are funded, et cetera, et cetera. We don't need them to explicitly say trans rights out loud, because at this point, saying trans rights has become a meme to the point where Xander Hall made Lauren Southern say it. So just saying trans rights in and of itself, it's not going to make me vote for somebody. It's going to be generally the way that they talk about specific issues. And when you appeal to all people, and when you're trying to appeal especially the people who aren't particularly in favor of it, you want to appeal more to other issues that they care about. People care about economic issues way more than they care about social issues, especially now, unfortunately.
Yeah, and that's true. However, like as somebody who's been fighting for democratic politics since 2012, and especially not democratic politics, but progressive politics actually, and was like a Bernie person, and has fought with these policy points in hand,
That
with
was your
knocking
mistake.
tens of thousands of doors, knocking tens of thousands of doors. I actually ran for office myself, thank you. And so like there's a lot there, and I've learned recently, and I'm going through a political evolution right now as we speak. I think it's kind of already happened, but the evolution is going post-progressive, because the progressive movement kicked me out as a trans woman here in California. Like it's like, nope, not gonna kick. We're not gonna invite you here anymore. Like I literally got ousted for being trans. Like it's actually evidence. I got the receipts on that. And so for me, I think we need to go past the progressive, like post-progressive ideology, because progressivism has become so toxic, and that anybody can just go up to a door and say, I'm progressive, I fight for Medicare for all, and then basically that would be the end of it. And so we have to go, I think, I don't know the answer to this, because like I said, I'm going through a political evolution myself, where I'm just standing for the issues and the policies, and then like having those policies endorse those candidates.
We'll gotta go to Sunny, and then we'll have to move on to our next thing. But
yeah,
you made me lol because of like the progressive caucus. Like I was like, oh boy, there we go. Yeah, go ahead.
It's a joke now. It's a joke. It's a meme.
Sunny.
Well, so I agree with what a lot has been said here about this about controlling the narrative about these topics, and how it's often done by focusing them around children. You know, it's done on one hand because they're vulnerable, they're voiceless, they represent a group that other people can co-opt to stand for. And you often see a lot of that in why people, are like, I'm doing this for your children, because there's not like there's like the children's party, you know, they're not, it's not like they have their own platform to speak on this, even though I mean now like more and more so you do get to hear children's voices on these topics. And then on the other side, you see a lot of focusing around them in these topics because, you know, like I said about them being vulnerable, they also do just have less control of their lives. They are, you know, a lot of their power comes from their parents. It comes from the institutions that they're under. And, you know, there's always these arguments are always going to be targeted towards them, you know, for for either good or bad. And it is certainly only a small part of the picture. And I guess like what I want to say, like for perhaps anyone to take away from this, is to be critical of the arguments that people are consistently bringing up on these topics, or really look at, you know, what media are you consuming? What streamer are you watching every day? What are they saying about these, you know, issues surrounding trans people? Do they keep bringing up like bathrooms and sports in high schools? Like, is this always what they're talking about? Like, are they always centering the discussion on these minute, like, pedantic arguments that we see conservatives go back to time and time again to get angry about? Where, you know, and as has been done in this panel, diverging from those narratives, you know, that you know that focus these topics on such small new like pedantic and, you know, still harmful scenarios, but that only seek to minimize the picture and to try and control the narrative of these topics, and to just, you know, be critical of that. You know, I guess that's what I'm taking away from all of this. I really enjoyed getting to hear everyone's perspective on this from some people much closer to the scenario and to the topics than I am, and to people whose lives have been touched much more significantly by these issues. I'm really grateful to get the opportunity to talk with y'all.
All right, so we'll move on to our next topic. And first of all, if you're enjoying this conversation, you just found us, then hit that follow button right now, and make sure notifications are on, because I do this 6 days a week. Don't want you to miss out. Yeah, and so we're gonna move on to our next topic. But before we do that, we're gonna have an announcement, a big channel announcement that I was telling you about earlier. And I'm happy Josie is here, or at least I was more happy until that last statement she made. Maybe you might actually disagree. We'll find out. But I've been talking about how like we're going to do something this Friday, and you know, like I couldn't talk about it yet, but now I feel like I can. We're actually going to do, yeah, this is for real. We're actually going to do some praxis here, right? We're actually going to do some organizing, right? And we're going to be doing organizing on Medicare for All. So yeah, I am working with an organization, and we are going to like put together like we'll do what we do best here. We'll do panels, right? We'll do a small panel, and we'll have people talking about their stories, right? Their healthcare nightmare stories here in the States. So we'll be sharing that, and also we're going to plug you into that organization so that you can be involved. They're going to be organizing so that, you know, we can contact your congressman or, you know, whatever, all the good things that organizers do. But we'll be plugging you in and giving you an outlet. Like if you want to actually see Medicare for All happen, and we're going to actually try to do this, right? We want Twitch politics to actually be a place where we get stuff done, right? That we're actually making a difference. And so, yeah, this is actually a fairly well-connected organization. And so there's a lot of possibilities that we can do. Maybe not, and it's not going to just be one event, right? We're actually be doing multiple. Like I'm proud to be like a founding member of this push within Twitch politics, right? And hopefully we'll be expanding this to others, right? And pulling them all in. But yes, we're going to be doing praxis here, right? And I want members of my community, my general community, if you have a story. So this the stream will be broken out in like in two parts, right? We'll have a closed panel like this, right? In which we'll have just a few people there to share their stories, and so hopefully maybe if one of the people who are here or just regularly part of the group, the circuit that comes through my channel, if they want to share their story on camera, that'd be great. Afterwards, we're going to hop over to their Discord server, right? This Medicare for All group, and we'll talk more about them on Friday. We'll hop over there and we'll use the Discord's new stage function, right? The audio only type thing, right? And so even if you don't have a camera and you want to join in and you want to tell your story there, right? That'll be a perfect place to do it. We want to hear from more people to share it. We're trying to make this a big thing, so there's a big push, right? Tell your friends, tell your family, like this is what we're going to be doing. And again, it's not going to be one time. We're going to be doing this multiple times, pushing Medicare for All, pushing for any strategy we can to move the ball forward, right? So this is like an all hands on deck effort to get to Medicare for All. So I'm really excited, unbelievably excited. I've been working on this for weeks. Unbelievably excited to be partnering with this organization, and I hope that we can actually, make something of this. I hope we can show that we're literally not just all talk. So
Yeah,
that's what we're trying to do.
I'm happy for you.
Mhm.
I'm glad that you're stepping into it, and I will help as much as you can, especially with like being a public figure. Getting into politics can be very difficult. Like you can get your hand caught in the cookie jar pretty easily with different types of finance things and things like that. But I do want to talk about one thing that you said, and I think it's very important. When we talk about Medicare for All, there's been a lot of studies that have now been shown, and I've been reading a lot on this. People want everybody to have healthcare, free point of service, like everything that we know what Medicare for All is, which is like the all encompasses, everything's paid, like it's great, right? However, people in minority communities don't trust Medicare. And regardless if you say Medicare or anything like that, like especially in the Black populations as well, they're like, no, screw that. I don't want Medicare for everything. I want to get out of this hellhole. Why are you trying to trap me into it? So, and a lot of times where I see the conversation getting lost, especially with Medicare for All organizations, is they're very Caucasian and they're very wrapped around like the deity-ness of Bernie Sanders. Like I finally took my Bernie Sanders sticker off my car. It was a very cleansing moment. I had to like meditate and be like, this is what it is. This is what it is now, right? And people have bought onto his rhetoric like a prophet. But the thing about it is, he had a lot of rhetoric that wasn't right, like Medicare for All. We should have said healthcare at point of service. People would have been able to figure that out very quickly rather than saying Medicare for All, which is like a logical leap. Bernie Sanders talked at a 10th grade level. That is the highest level speaking candidate, presidential candidate that has ever existed in history. We can't let people take those logical leaps on their own. So I would like to see a rebranding. I would like to see a rebranding that is focused in minority communities, BIPOC populations, that is more than just Medicare for All. Because when you go to the door saying that, they're not going to like it. What you have to do is you have to rebrand the whole conversation of like, we want to make sure that healthcare is available to all people, free at the point of service. Just straight up and say it. The reason that Bernie Sanders was hiding behind the Medicare for All language is because he never wanted to say the word free, because Americans were like, ooh, free, you're going to give it away. But we just need to be honest with it, be upfront with people, because the more we dance around like the political topic of what Medicare for All is, which is free effing healthcare. Let's be honest with people. And if you're telling people this is free healthcare, guess what people want? They want free effing healthcare. They don't care what the branding is. So it seems like you're coming in a leadership position in this project, Prime. I want to see this rhetoric pulled forward. Medicare for All is dead rhetoric. We need to change it. We need to evolve it into being what the issue actually is, which is the stories that you're talking about. Because it's not that people aren't asking for Medicare, they're asking for healthcare for all. right? They're asking for healthcare. They're asking for free at the point of service, not some arbitrary medical system that has existed since the 60s, right? Or 30s. So that's kind of the way that I would look at it. And yeah, I'm getting pretty jaded when it comes to like progressive politics and the way the language is used, because the it's been weaponized against us, and a lot of people who are uneducated have run a roughshod in really bad arguments and made all of the progressive intellectuals look like complete idiots. So I'm just going to focus on the issues and focus on what the actual thing is. It's not Medicare for all. You're wanting to give healthcare to people free at the point of service. That's what it actually is. And we need to stop dancing around the bush. So I love you, and I'm really happy that you're doing this, and I'll give you all the help you need. I love to see streamers organizing in a very strong way. So, but I'm critic, so I'm always a critic. But I am happy that you're doing it though. So please don't let that be a raining on your parade, because I fully support it and I want as many people to get involved as possible. Everybody get involved. I'm serious. Like, do it now. So yeah, that's my critique and that's my point.
Yeah,
It's
thanks
also
so
so easy to get involved. It's so easy.
Yeah.
And super fun. You meet really cool people.
Exactly.
Also, if you'd like Canadians to come by, we can come on and
I-
let you know what it's like to have free healthcare.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
Real quick, I had a question.
Canadians are
Oh,
just like,
boy.
I got sick and I went to the doctor, I guess, and I got like medicine.
Like, I would totally be down to do
Oh.
this because I had a burst appendix and everybody thought that it was literally just me having a really bad stomach ulcer. So I'd be okay with that. Like literally never ever trust New York hospitals, I swear to God. The second thing too is like, wasn't it like 70% of people just wanted a like private option? I mean, I'm all for Medicare for all, but
I'm guessing you meant public option.
yeah, public option, but with private alternatives and things like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm still for it. I fuck it. I'll help you out.
So the polling, when it comes to Medicare for all, the polling depends heavily on how you phrase the question. But beyond that, there is a lot of people who support the program. Like, if you describe the program entails, people who support the program. However, a lot of people want a public option as well, because that seems less scary to them. Oh, I can keep the insurance that's been abusing me the entire time? Great. I mean, yeah, sure. So yeah, a lot of people want a public option, and so this organization that I'm working with, right, understands that is the case, and is saying that we'll move the ball forward any way we can. Medicare for all, or you like to call it, being the final goal, right? But literally take any victory that we can, anywhere where we can, and just move the ball forward to get people within government healthcare at some point, right? Exposing them to its benefits, and then eventually, at some point, right, take our victories where we can and get to Medicare for all. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Yeah, like I said, I'll
Mhm.
if you need anybody to talk about healthcare horrors, like I was a farm tech. I could tell you about people being prescribed painkillers for like literal stomach aches. So trust me, there's a lot wrong with the system as we have it now. And I know that you used to work in a hospital too, so, or in the health field, so I definitely love to be part of that.
Okay.
I am professionally on the verge of death at all times. So if you would like to talk about, if you would like me to come by and just say how free healthcare helps me not be dead, I could do that.
Sure. We'll work this all out later.
For
This
you.
is just my announcement that we're going to be doing this. That's all. Okay. This is a thing that we're happening. And so it's tentatively this Friday. Probably this Friday. Might have to move it back. I don't know. But for now, this Friday. But we are, moving. Trying to organize here. Trying to actually accomplish something here on Twitch Politics, people. Always saying that, hey, you're just talking. Well, we're trying to do a bit more than that and get people plugged in and actually put their energy somewhere, right? If you're looking for this policy, if you think this policy is a benefit, then yeah, this is a place to do it. And yeah, we're going to be sharing stories. We'd love for you to come back again. You don't have to be a streamer or anything, right? Especially for the audio only part, you can just share your story. Whoever, or if you know of someone who has a story, and so many of us do, unfortunately, right? Who has a horror story, and dealing with these health insurance companies, or how Medicare for all would have saved their lives, right? Or made their lives much easier, help them avoid such hardships. And please come by. We love to have them. We're trying to make this a big thing. So, all right. Thanks so much. All right, so we can move on to the next topic. Great. And assuming I actually have that on my screen, I don't. All right, here it is. Tennis champion Naomi Osaka was fined $15,000 after she announced that she would not do media interviews during the French Open, saying she was prioritizing her mental health. The tournament organizers say they tried to communicate with Naomi, but that she was unwilling to do so. They also say that the health of their competitors is their almost utmost priority. Do you think that's the case? Does any sports organization actually care about their athletes? Or does this case show that an athlete's well-being will always be outweighed by profits? Okay, yeah, and I guess an update to this that happened after I wrote this question is that Naomi has exited the French Open. So unfortunately, she just decided that's just like, why bother? She'd probably get more penalties if she wasn't going to be doing these interviews. So yeah, just talking about not just Naomi, but athletes in general. You have to do these leagues or are these organizers? Do you think they actually care? Do you think this is this is what they say in PR, right? But in the end, you need them to be performing. So we'll start with Johnny Scarlett.
It is PR, and more, the job of a pro athlete is to be a reality television star. From the moment that you enter camp in the NFL, you have cameras on you. They have summer camp shows that play on sports networks. I used to work at Hooters, so I had to watch a lot of this shit. These are incredibly like the ones at the top. You're talking about like a Drew Brees, who's very like popular with people in New Orleans. We had like one Super Bowl, and it was like when I was in 6th grade, and Drew Brees was everybody's hero. And part of that was not just because he was, a really good football player, but it was also because he has a lot of charisma, and he was part of he was part of that like first generation in the early 2000s to really come into this, like, we're going to do it like reality TV now. Naomi Osaka is 23 years old. She's incredibly young. I know that, there's probably some people on the panel who are as young as her, but like, 23 is young, y'all. She's been drinking for 2 years. If she drinks, I'm sure she doesn't. She's a pro athlete. But at the same time, and you may agree or disagree with this, but this is just how it is. Now, am I allowed to call out of work or specifically say, I'm not going to have meetings with the boss because of my mental health? No, not without some sort of fine or resignation. So her being fined $15,000, considering how much she's making to be in the open, seems like sort of the reasonable course.
Okay,
That's it.
Marcy.
Yeah, so, am I muted? I'm totally muted, aren't I?
No.
Oh, I'm not muted. Oh, holy shit. That's the first time that's ever happened to me ever. Okay, so I haven't really researched this story. I kind of agree with Johnny on the particulars of like this story, based on what it sounds like. But I will say, what is an athlete but an employee of the person who owns the team? So yeah, professional athletes, or I mean, tennis isn't a team sport, obviously, but an employee of somebody, right? So yeah, athletes are pretty goddamn exploited. Especially, I mean, the track from like high school into college on athletic scholarships, and then from college into the professional world, or if you stay in college, there are plenty. Like, I mean, look at the way the NFL treats their players, with the whole like concussion thing. Look at the way sports leagues like look at baseball's history with race. Fucking. They're no different from any other employer in that they treat their employees like shit a lot of the time, and they don't respect them for anything other than profit, right? However, yeah, in this instance, I mean, that sounds kind of reasonable. If I just didn't show up for a mental health day at my fucking wage cage grocery store job, I would probably get fired. unless like the person right above me handled it, in which case I'd probably get a slap on the wrist. But that kind of fine for that kind of like, I guess, public letdown for something like the French Open, as well as the like no call no show aspect of it. Yeah, I don't know. I think that probably sounds reasonable, especially considering they make a lot of money. That's it though.
Neil.
Oh my god, I pulled a Marcy there. I had myself muted.
Pulled a
Um,
You pulled
PrimeCayes.
a
Oh my god.
Marcy.
Yeah.
You pulled a Marcy. Thank you. All right.
Pulling a Marcy is when you're a fucking based girl boss all
No,
the time,
no,
okay?
no.
Pulling a Marcy is when you have objectively
as this
correct
stream
takes.
as this stream has proved, no, it's when you mute yourself. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
I'll tell you what. I'm girl bossing 24/7.
Oh yeah, always be girl boss.
I will say this. So in terms of her leaving the French Open traditionally isn't like how we would view sports leagues. It's a tournament that doesn't really have signed competition. The Roland Garros, I believe is the name of it. I'm probably butchering that super, super badly. It's an open tournament where people compete for prize money. However, absolutely, they don't actually care about her mental health. They released that statement solely because she announced it first and they wanted to put a positive spin on it instead of them looking like abject monsters to most people. In terms of if sports leagues actually care about their players and not just the profit motive, then I would say we should probably ask Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah.
Because look at how well he got respected by the league. Anything.
Josie?
Oh yeah.
Josie, can you hear us?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's your turn.
Did you call? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so to be honest, like usually I see these topics like right before I get off work and then I'm in here. But so this is the first time I've been thinking about this one, but I kind of see the direction that things are going about like mental health and things like that. And I agree. I think there's like different levels of how things work. And I'm sure there's like contracts and things of that nature. And I think a lot of times those contracts are written unfairly. Like sometimes I get overwhelmed at work, but I have one of those salary jobs and I'm like a supervisor where it's like, "Hey, I need a mental health day." And guess what? I get it. And nobody says anything. And I get it and I get paid time off and I get like and the next day I feel great. But I know I'm super privileged because I have a job like that. Now, when you look at these athletes, I don't like the way that they find that person. It's like if you do this event, then you get this. So like I like contractual ideas, like especially if you're gonna do a contract, like let's say you say, okay, I'm gonna participate in this league or I'm gonna be a part of this league, and you write a contract and it says, okay, like itemize the contract. It's like if you do the press conference, it's an extra $15,000, right? If you don't, if you and then kind of like itemize it to allow the person to have a little bit more care, like I get like if they're a trained athlete, there's a lot of different ways that people get into the spirit of whatever they're doing. So like even if an actor or whatever you're doing at the like the highest level of human possibility, like people have their methods and some people want to get in the zone and don't want to talk to a bunch of nosy reporters for whatever reason. I think that a person should have that opportunity, but I don't like the way that these contracts are written because it's like you're an employee and you are now part of my property, and if you don't do anything for me, then I'm going to make sure that you're going to be punished or completely removed from the project, right? And I don't like that type of way. So I think in a real sense, this is not just about sports. It's a greater sense of how we look at people and how we deal with like human capital and how we operate with humans. Because a lot of times it's like, oh, you signed a contract, you signed a couple $1,000,000, I own you. Or you signed a contract and now it's like you got a $25,000 or $45,000 job year, whatever. Like people feel like they have all entitlement to your time, your life, your privileges, everything that involves with you because they blessed you with a position for you to do work for them to get profit from your work. So I think that this is a greater question of like how we are asking these athletes to perform. Because like Johnny said, the fact of the matter is, like, if there is a PR element to the athletes, then the athletes need to know what they're signing up for and should have an opportunity to say, no, I just throw a ball good. I don't need to talk to anybody, right? And I think that's an athlete's right to be able to say that. And I think these extracurriculars should be paid if they do them, but not required to. So if that was like, if there was a way to solve the answer, that would be it. But yeah. So
Sunny?
I have a lot of hangups with the sports industry. I think, workers within the sports industry are worked down to the bone without regard for their mental or physical health, like workers in pretty much every field in our society. There is a high what's highlighted there, especially for athletes, is physical health. I'm sure we all have some example we can bring to mind of where athletes' physical health has been put to the wayside for them to perform, for them to make profit. The one that's salient for me is thinking about the well-known research we have into all of the trauma done to the brain in football, and the lack of regard for that damage. What else was I gonna say? Yeah, I guess that in this case, if we're talking about Naomi and the French Open, um it is less of like employee to employer, as I guess like more independent contractor. And I think that we can look at the three organizations which ran the French Open, which were in control of this decision, and critique them and their contracting obligations. I don't think that athletes, I was really gonna call them sports players. Athletes should be obligated to give interviews, for example, when, if they're signing up for a tournament. I think that there are different scenarios in which athletes are hired for profit, and that they all have their different their different needs and obligations. I don't think that there should be an obligation for interviews just for tournaments. I think there has been countless hours of footage and time wasted on sports interviews from athletes that clearly don't want to be doing the interview and have nothing to say about the game they just played. Yeah, so that's pretty much how I feel.
Maddie?
Yeah, so I have a unique insight into this because I worked for the NBA for 5 years in marketing. So I remember this. I mean, this has been sort of a hotly contested issue for a long time. Some folks will remember when Marshawn Lynch would show up to press conferences and just repeat, I'm only here so I don't get fined. I'm just here so I don't get fined. And the real reason why we have that media availability as part of a contract, it's really to appease the press outlets for coverage, and it allows them to be able to say, oh, I went and got my like direct quote, or we got this like video clip, and that somehow is how they like populate all the content that they have to create about a game for the next like day and a half or whatever. And I've always thought it's absurd. I've always thought it's a little ridiculous, when I think of like the job of an athlete. I would assume that the job of an athlete would be to perform at the highest level, be the best they can possibly be as a competitor, and do that on the field. Now, I recognize they make a lot of money, so people are saying like, oh, well, it's part of the job, it's part of the job. But if we're looking at the outcome, right, it's like, okay, well, they want some sort of quote or something. There's got to be other methods for like, why couldn't reporters like submit questions and then have like the person respond or like give responses back if they have some sort of like anxiety with the press. I mean, where it's a little silly to expect athletes to also be press secretaries. And yeah, and they're not like I don't know, their job description is for them to perform well, but they can be fined if they don't do this, really just because it makes the media salty. And I know this because I've had to deal with sports media, and they are take themselves so freaking seriously and get like so salty over bullshit. But have you ever watched like a sports press conference? Do they uncover anything of value in sports press conferences after games? No. No, they uncover nothing. But the only reason they do it is so those publications and media outlets can say, like, oh, we got a quote from so and so, or they get like some video to take up time in the evening news broadcast, and that's it. So it's not like there's anything of value happening. And I say this again as someone who worked in sports for a while. And I literally was like one of the people that conducted media trainings for players to like train them on how to, because like talking to media is really fucking hard and stressful. And especially when you're new to it, especially when you're as young as someone like Naomi Osaka, like it's so stressful. And if you already have anxiety, like she has to deal with enough by just like competing at the highest level. I think it's so dumb that like because she's trying to just I mean, she tried at first to be able to stay in the French Open and say like, look, I need to do this for my mental health. Like I'm open to other avenues. But instead, like she dropped out because that's how important looking out for your mental health can be. So yeah, I think those press conferences are dumb. And I say good for her for standing up for herself, and I hope it sets a trend.
I don't know.
Ooh, yeah. So she like said even before like the French Open even started that she wasn't going to be taking interviews, and like that's someone that's very cognizant of like what the state of their health is. And like I don't know, would you ever go in and like interview an astronaut or like someone that's a rocket engineer being like, yo, so I see you're see that thing you were just working on for the last 5 years crashed. How do you feel about it? Like right after, like that's so stupid. Like you would never ask somebody to go ahead and like talk about like something that they've been working on for years about like, so you failed. How was that? Like that's ridiculous. And I think like obviously sports organizations don't care about their athletes. They don't care about their athletes like personal lives. They don't care about their athletes' opinions. There's so many different times where like different types of NBA associations or like teams, like the owner will like force their employees to go ahead and retract statements, even though that's what they actually believe. Like it's profit. Like they don't give two fucks about like your well-being, how you're feeling, anything like that. They just want to go ahead and generate money. So yeah, no, like they say that they care about the health of their competitors and it's an utmost priority. Like then prove it. Like don't make somebody that's like cognizant of the fact that this isn't their for her first time going ahead to the French Open and then doing an interview and she's just like, oh, I don't know what it's like, but I don't want to do it. No, like she knows what it's like. She knows she doesn't want to fucking do it. So like if you cared, you would like go ahead and respect the fact that she says like this is my limit and my limit does not include this. So like no, they don't care. Like go on, show horse. Do the thing for us. Do the fucking entertainment. Like that's all you are is just an entertainment curator. So do it. If not, then like we don't give two shits. And like I don't know. I even further respect the fact that she knew ahead of time that she was gonna be fined for it, and she was like, "Fuck it, fine me." Like she does not want to do it. She's cognizant of her like boundaries, and these are her boundaries.
Um, I, I'm not a myself. I'm not a sports person. I don't know the sports balls. I don't know. But I care about like labor issues, and this is essentially a labor issue. I feel
only
like
true sport.
that the big
Oh.
issue. Sorry, that the I feel like that this issue comes down to like whether this is a core job function, right? Because I think Marcy made an interesting point about like, well, not coming in for a mental health day, and like, you know, I just had a
Yeah,
normal job, and that would be a
well,
problem. Well, let me finish my
I-
point. Let me finish my point.
okay.
Yeah, so like, that not coming in for her job would be a problem. But on the other side of this, I mean, this isn't that. I mean, like, she performed within. Actually, I have no idea. Like, if the tournament started and she was in the middle of it, I actually don't know. But I'm assuming it started and she was in the middle of it, right? And then she comes in, she does the thing, right? The hitting the ball back and forth, right? She does the thing, and then afterwards, she's like, I don't want to talk to the press this time, right? Like, what is that worth a fine? I mean, I get that it's
I don't
contractually
think-
obligated. Let me finish my point. I don't think it's I don't think something like this is worth a fine. And to be clear, they said like, if she continued not to do the media interviews, right, the penalties would increase, including being disqualified from the tournament altogether, right? So simply not talking to the press, right, deciding, right, and for, you know, possibly very good reasons, that I don't want to be in front of cameras, to ask me a named question. I think Maddie would hit the nail on the head. Asking me a named questions that don't actually reveal anything, that don't like give you like insight into the sport, right? Like, or like, I'm not gonna make you a better tennis pro yourself. Doesn't do any of that. It's simply to have a clip that can be played later on, right? Is that worth going up to disqualifying someone because you don't want to be a part of that? I can see them incentivizing them. Again, maybe like someone said about paying them to do it, right? It's like, okay, here's a bonus to do these things, right? But I think this is more for the organization because it helps them make money, rather than like actually do anything for the sport itself, like for that literal organization. So yeah, to advertise them. But anyway, that's my opinion.
Prime, I wanted to clarify really quick. I don't think that I changed my mind on the option. I hadn't read the article prior to the panel, so I was under the impression that she just didn't show up to the tournament. I realize now we're talking about a press conference, and yeah, I don't give a shit. In addition to that, I'd like to say that I think the concept of the mental health day should not be this meme among managers at like any firm. It should be treated as what it is, like a valid health concern for a lot of people. I think that we'd have more productive workplaces, happier workplaces, and better workplaces if we respected the idea that people sometimes like they need to take a break for their mental health in the same way that people need to take breaks for their physical health. So yeah, I don't think it's justified of them to fine her for missing a press conference because she was in a bad state of mind and didn't want to do it. That sounds a little silly to me.
This is the kind of place where somebody who is really in tune with like economics and shit that I don't really know about, would say something like, that's where it's going to hurt small businesses because small businesses can't afford to hire a bunch of people the way Best Buy can. So if somebody doesn't show up to Best Buy for Mental Health Day, it's one thing. If somebody doesn't show up to Papa Joe's to serve sandwiches for Mental Health Day, the Papa Joe's may not serve sandwiches. It's like do we at what point do we say either we need supplemental income in this country, and I know this is totally not talking about pro athletes, but either we need supplemental income in this country the way that Andrew Yang has proposed, the way that so many people have proposed UBIs, or Papa Joe's isn't going to fucking exist in 10 years. Because people are starting to ask for mental health days. They are starting to ask for more than $8 an hour. And yeah, that's where my mind goes. I don't know what it's like to be a pro athlete, but I know what it's like to work at a sandwich shop.
Same thing. I think you do know what it's like you've slung sandwiches. You know what it's like. It's the same thing.
I just wanted to say that so people are already taking these days, even if their works are allowing space for that or not. They just call in sick. Like it's already happening. If they were to
Yeah.
put that space in, like into these jobs to be like, okay, like you're allowed to, like there's some buffer for this or whatever. I'm not saying like, yeah, just don't come into work. It's fine. Like
No, it would just
obviously
take the
not.
onus off people to fucking like lie and be like, no,
Yeah.
I'm actually sick, because people take breaks for their mental health
And
because
just
people
value
are
people's
affected by that
mental
shit.
health in the workplace more so.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
but
that's
it's
what I mean.
not
And I
gonna
mean, it's
ruin small businesses. I worked for a small business for 2 years that had an open policy with these kinds of things and just really relied on having a very large workforce that had a very fluid, like, pick up, drop kind of shift thing.
because of the like Protestant work ethic kind of thing, we tend to think of like, oh well, if we let more space for people to miss work, then they'll be missing work all the time because like people are lazy. And even if we don't consciously
They
think that,
still
that kind
they
of
still
idea
need the money.
has been planted in our head, you know. But yeah, I mean, most people aren't like sitting around trying to scheme up ways not to work. Like that,
Right.
that definitely, yeah.
Yeah, like, well, and
Okay.
like as someone who's like, I'm close with people in the sports industry. Like, it's a very small industry, and it's kind of one of those like wink. Everyone knows that those like press conferences and media availability. We all know it's bullshit. Like we all like everyone knows that, but like the reason that teams and especially the league still pushes for them is because it brings in good sponsorship revenue at NBA press conferences. Anytime you see a Gatorade bottle on the table and you notice how every other bottle has to be covered up, that's because Gatorade pays big money to be the exclusive like provider for those. Anytime you see signage as a backsplash, that's big money, especially if it's a nationally broadcast game and press conference. Their rules are a little different for local broadcast because obviously they want to like gate how teams can sell sponsorship. But like that's the real story. It has nothing to do with like journalistic integrity or like, oh no, but they should have, the media should have access to them because that's what's vital to like promoting our sport. Now, like that's not, there are so many other ways they could do that that don't involve this like big show of a press conference. They do that because it's sponsorship that like for the most part those players like don't really get a piece of, and in many cases the sponsorship they sold for those press conferences directly like contradict the sponsorship that player, like the sponsor deals that player has signed on to. So like if the player has a deal signed with Powerade, they still have to like go to a press conference where Gatorade is featured. But like, so I don't know, because I think some people mistake it where like, oh, but it's just part of the job and that's what they should do. And it's like, not that's not how people in the sports industry view it. They view it as like, oh well, this is a valuable revenue stream, so we don't want to give them an inch to get rid of that because we make money through it. It has nothing to do with like, I don't know, players' well-being. That doesn't even enter the conversation, unfortunately.
So let's go
And
to
that's the
Neo.
problem.
Let's go to Neo. And let's be clear that if I could get a sponsorship, I would have like a logo board behind me right now. I mean, I'm very clear about that. I'm not above that. But Neo, please.
Okay, so first of all, in the way that we use, in the way that our economy is right now, because we are mostly based off of a Chicago school style of economy, as promoted by Milton Friedman, it will in fact hurt small business owners. The only reason why it hasn't affected small business owners when it comes to people taking extra days off due to COVID is because we have a financial incentive from the government to repay or to give people benefits when it comes to taking days off for COVID. Now, that is a criticism of the current economic system of monetarism that we have right now, and why we should definitely return to a sort of neo-Keynesian idea. Secondly, the only real sport that ever exists and ever will exist in all of its entire is hockey, because hockey has the Players Association, which actively strikes. And Maddie, I fundamentally disagree when it comes to the notion that interviews do nothing. Interviews do one really, really important thing, and that's let me know how big Don King's hair's gotten.
Marcy. See, Marcy's doing a Marcy move. Exactly. This is her thing, not my thing. So I don't know to tell you.
See, I thought you were commenting on what I was actually saying. I was I unfortunately have to dip. I just got a message. I got a peace out, but I just really quick before I leave want to touch on something. Katarana and who else was there? Ugly Pie and of course Prime. You remember we touched on this a little bit in the neurodivergency panel of like the question of like workplace accommodations for people. A lot of people have a lot of conditions that can lead to them being extremely overwhelmed in the workplace. And I think even if it's not missing an entire day of work, companies that promote having a policy where somebody can like take a few minutes to themselves if they need it do a lot better because their staff is a lot more like mentally ready to be in the situation where they're doing their job, right? It's a lot harder to sling coffee with somebody who's like internally screaming and breaking down on the inside than it is to sling coffee with somebody who's doing totally fine. So thanks Prime. Thanks everybody else. I love you all. Twitch.tv/girlbossmarcy. We play video games, talk about politics, and appear on Prime panels. Bye guys.
Have a good one. Thank
Bye,
you.
Marcy. Keep girl bossing.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, all
Bye,
the
Kevin.
time.
Girl
Oh,
boss
get
gonna
out.
girl boss.
Okay. All
Always
right.
be girl boss.
All right. So yeah. Who else? Look what well, Karan, and then we'll go to Jersey.
Yeah, so in my experience, like a job that I feel like genuinely cares about my well-being will be one in which I can go ahead and if it's not like something like, making sandwiches and I'm the only one on shift, they will understand, hey, like this is really something that I cannot do currently. Sometimes there have been times where I take 2 days to get back to my job because I'm just not having a good time and like they'll be understanding of that because if you're like a good performer it's more important that they keep you as like an employee rather than going ahead and punishing you for like every dip in serotonin that your body seems to produce. So yeah, it just really seemed strange to me that there's this weird conflictual message and yeah, I just really don't see how there could even be
Oh my
it just seems strange to me like part of what corporate has to say is we care about people's mental well-being and just so you know this month is get a therapist month but also we don't provide therapy for our own employees, like it's just that real like so from a HQ, we have to say, but really, like, we don't give two fucks.
Take a moment in the nice, relaxing Amazon repainted phone booth.
The scream box, yes.
Jersey.
So, one of the things that I always hear when I get on these type of conversations is the idea of like, oh, but if we give people benefits, small businesses will be hurt. And that argument's been being used since the beginning. Anytime any rights were given, it's like we can't give children rights because then small businesses will be hurt. We can't let people have weekends off or small businesses would be hurt. Like we can't give people 8-hour work weeks because businesses would be hurt. So there are ways that we can operate where and it's like one of those things. It's like I've been a small business owner. I've owned a firm where I've had like 1 or 2 employees, and it's not easy. It's hard. But as a business owner, I do go into that with that knowledge. It's like going in and saying, I'm not gonna if I'm not a landowner, but I don't condone land ownership. But if you were to use this analogy, like if you were a person who owned a property and you were going to rent it out, it's like the idea of like I'm not going to rent this property out because somebody might mess it up. Like I'm gonna have a bad tenant and they're gonna mess it up. So why am I gonna go through the risk? It's the same thing if you're gonna have a sandwich shop with 2 people. Like if you're gonna have a sandwich shop with 2 people, then you like it's probably gonna be mom and pop, maybe a family operation, and you're already knowing like, man, if one of these people are out, like our business is shutting down. So that's one of the things that people have to think about. Is like maybe if we have 4 employees, or maybe we should have 2 part-time employees that can cover each other's shifts and things like that. So strategies do exist in these ways, and I always like the logic tree of this. And I kind of play this argument game, but it's kind of fun. So this is two people having a conversation. So it's like, why are wages so low? Because small businesses can't afford to pay people wages. Okay, so what would small business owners have to do if they wanted to pay those wages? They would have to raise the prices of the items. So why can't they raise the price of the items? Because people don't make enough money in their work to buy the items. So why don't you just raise wages? So it's like it goes into this entire circle, like Ugly Pie just did, which is this idea that if we give people more benefits, we give people more wages, then people will thrive more. Therefore, the economy in those areas goes. So people go to dinner more, people buy more TVs, people buy more widgets, people buy it's just the natural progression of economics, and it's kind of like the Keynesian style of what was said before, of like
Yep.
going in and out.
Face
It's
Keynes.
like yeah. So like the economy is like a respiratory system in a way. It's like you give money to it and it brings you money back. You give money to it and it gives you money back. So if you give people a larger employment, they pay more taxes. Then the government can use those taxes to benefit people's employment. It's like you could just go into this giant circle, and it's kind of like how modern monetary theory works. And we're already kind of in it, but I'm going into a lot of different topics. Sorry for creating too many conversation trees. But so the thing is, I want people to think like it was said already, like people are already taking mental health days. Like I'm calling in because I don't want to go in because I feel like crap, right? Like screaming on the inside is a perfect way of saying it. It's like I'm screaming on the inside and you don't want me to do that in your workplace. So how about you let me get some sleep? And those things do exist. So I think that if we cater more to the like employee side of things, and then if owners like know this. I work for a completely queer organization. Most of the people are trans. It's one of the most magical places that I ever thought existed in the world of workplaces. But so like there's like so many accommodations that are done for people. Like we have people who are autistic, we have people that are ADHD, we have people from all different types of walks of life, people who have been chronically poor, homeless, people who are super advantaged. Like we have all these different types of work of life, and all of these balances go in, and we have this amazing workplace where people are gone for like 2 or 3 days, but it's okay because that needs to be done for that person's well-being. But when they come back, they're just it's so efficient. And I've seen workplaces work in this way, and it's super great. Like literally one time I was like in the middle of a hard day, deadlines had to be done. And I was like, I did all the major like deadlines, but I was screaming on the inside. I like texted my boss. I'm like, I'm taking 4 of my hours of my PTO. I'm taking a half day. I cannot stand it anymore. I'm going to go lay down. And she was like, great, go take care of yourself. Go do that. And the next day I caught up on all the things I missed. So there is a way that things can happen, and I think that people need to stop looking at like the employer does what I say all the time, and if they don't do that, then I can't thrive, and therefore you fail. You're the failure in the machine. I think it needs to be more of a partnership situation, and I think like if you have a small staff, you can have those relationships with those small staff like you would a family member. And I think that's really what happens in those mom and pop situations, because I owned a mom and pop for like 4 years. So it's like I get the way that it works, and for me it's like it's not as bad as people make it think. And
That
like if you rely so much on
that
employees
that
like in
was
that
that was
way, that's bad. Oh, go
partner
ahead.
Neo.
Yeah. Why is that? Partner Neo? Yeah.
Yeah, my yeah, no. Somebody walked in and I had to ask you a few questions. It's like, hey,
Oh
how are
yeah.
you doing? How's the day going? Things like that.
Yeah.
No, I was gonna say, basically, like when I was riffing off Johnny, it was more a criticism of the idea that, essentially, ever since we switched over to using things like the Chicago School of Economics, everything is completely went to hell. Because if we look at the way that the Keynesian model worked, all the way up until the 70s, the minimum wage increased rapidly, and we had probably the highest minimum wages compared to then, or compared to now. So it's really I forget who said it, but there was a quote in relation to the coronavirus which said that all economics or all economic professors and all economists are actually Keynesians when they're in foxholes. So
Yeah.
also the notion of mental health days being somehow unproductive or horrible for companies could kind of be blown away by probably one of the most anti-worker friendly companies in the world. That's Amazon, which actually provides you enough paid time off to take an entire week of mental health days if you were to start right now. So to say that that would fundamentally set back the entire system would be is just laughable. What we do need is we need a productive service that allows us to have a living wage, the ability to afford things, and most importantly, we need a reform in the tax system that allows it. So if you only like say that you only work like 1 or 2 days a week, that your paycheck is going to reflect your actual payment, like your actual minimum wage, and not a bazillion things that have been taken out of them. Now, as in regards to mental health, in regards to sponsorship, in regards to giving interviews, I feel like it's a valid reason to say, hey, I'm not up to talk to about 1,000 different reporters at the same time. This isn't like the 1950s. We have the ability for somebody to slap a Gatorade logo on their chest, give one interview, and have 1,000 different networks play the same interview. I find it laughable that we still even need these pregame, especially for tennis opens. And I find it laughable. Like, I don't know. It's just really, really weird that out of all of the leagues that are having this issue, it's the French Open, which isn't technically a league. It's a contest. It's like, why don't you want to give an interview? It's like, I don't know. I don't speak French. I don't want to talk to ESPN. I'm burnt out on already talking to people because I just got done doing the US Open. I'm burnt out on talking to people because I just got done doing an entire media tour. I don't know. I'm burnt out because really, when I signed up for the French Open, it didn't include me doing any interviews with French or American media or British media. It just included me putting my money in to potentially win the French Open. So for them to turn around and save face and be like, well, actually, we care about the people in the Open. We want them to care. When it took them forever to even replace the actual tennis top with like an actual durable modern material that wasn't just grass. So I don't know. It's all confusing. Econ's one of my major things. I love econ. I love talking econ. By the way, I will disagree with you on one thing. Private property is awesome. The ability to have private property is super, super cool. The ability to have personalia is really, really cool. And I also think that owning guns is pretty cool. That's just my general Samantha Banana Jr. shout out. But yeah, I believe all of those things are pretty cool.
Neo,
My
I want to talk to you about
socialism is
private
troubling.
property.
Okay.
Am I muted?
No, no, we heard. I'm just saying,
Sorry.
the socialist button is just going. Ah.
Yeah, me
I'm
too.
I am firmly not a socialist. I'm firmly a capitalist, but I believe in Keynesian economics, or more accurately, neo-Keynesian ideas.
Keynesian economics is socialist.
He kind of.
It is. It's purely
Neo
socialist.
Keynesian
Yeah.
economics is based. Paul Krugman is Bay, etc., etc.
Yeah, like the thing is, this is the problem with the socialist capitalism discourse. Like, it's not that we're like socialist commies and things like that. It's a school of thought versus school of thought. Like, people think that you can like be an academic and like turn government into like if academics were like the people who ruled government, then yeah, socialists and capitalists would actually make a lot of sense in the way that we identify. But the thing is, like, politicians are academics. You use academics as a launching point to build policy from. So you can have capitalist point of views and socialist point of views, and you can lean toward one or the other. But to say that you only believe in one school of thought is kind of limiting. Like, if you want to be like somebody who wants to look at policy in a holistic point of view, you have to look at all pillars of economic identity. Because if you don't, you're going to pigeonhole yourself because it's like, oh, that's on the socialist border of the line over there. Like, the best way to do things are mixed economies. So like the idea that like somebody's a strict socialist or strict capitalist doesn't make sense to me. It's like saying that I only believe in biology in the 18th century way of thinking, and that's the only way I'm ever going to look at it. Like, it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
But that's me against the discourse of socialist versus capitalist, because it doesn't make sense in reality. Because in reality, we all have different academic schools of thought that we all adhere to, some more than others.
Yeah, generally whenever I say I'm not a socialist, it's more on other panels where I'm talking to where everybody's like incredibly like, well, did you read this theory? Have you read? Normally it's like, okay, let me rephrase this. Normally it's me talking to Wordy.
Okay.
So
Okay.
Oh,
All right.
I'm familiar with Wordy.
I love Wordy to
Yeah.
death,
So
but
okay, sure. It seems like we've moved far away from the topic.